Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the XboxEra podcast. Yep. I'm just checking, it's episode 26. It's been a while since we last recorded. We are joined, as always, by myself, Sikamikanico, Shpeshal Ed, Kaironaut, and a special guest, lead designer from Moon Studios, Chris Mcentee. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm great.
He's great. And yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, it's good to have you. It's been a couple of weeks since we last all got together, and it's always nice to have a special guest, especially from Moon. We had Thomas last time, and Thomas is your boss. Is that right?
Yes.
He'll be watching you carefully as you leak anything. And just to preamble this, we'll get to community questions at the end. Everyone that's asked what Moon's new game is, it's not going to be revealed here, so ditch all hope. All right,
we tried. Thomas wasn't going to let it happen.
We tried. everything. What have you guys been playing lately? Anything interesting? Anything good, games wise?
West of Dead, which I'm doing the review for. It's an indie roguelike twin stick, procedurally generated cover shooter.
Is that the one that they revealed at E3 and there was like a beta test that was dropped on the day?
Where it looked like Cowboy Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Really good game. Oh. It's on Game Pass, so just download it.
I'll give
play it. It's really good.
What about you, Cairo? Anything good?
It's classified.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting answer. Classified gameplay.
I implicitly signed an NDA. I am not allowed to talk about it.
Interesting.
So.
Oh, okay. There you go. What
Look,
about you,
man,
Chris?
I don't want to get sued. Okay,
Fair enough.
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Fair enough.
I don't want to get sued. All I can say is I signed an NDA and I've been playing it recently.
There's no NDA for Valorant, man. Everyone knows about it.
It's not Valorant.
What about you, Chris? You've been playing anything good?
I've actually been just pretty much consistently, relatively slowly whittling away at my Animal Crossing island.
Oh God!
It's actually one of my. It's one of the franchises that I really loved from the GameCube era. Like as a teenager, I really enjoyed it. Got into it. Thought it was something special, and it's kind of the perfect cool down game after a day of work. We're all stuck at home anyway for the most part, so just chilling on the couch and building this island with my wife who has her own house on the island and stuff. As like a level designer, I kind of really enjoy terraforming and decorating and all that kind of stuff just to make the island feel nice. She just covers it in flowers, but I'm putting all the paths and I'm like, the navigation around this. Yeah, the navigation around this building is kind of awkward, so I should make the path a bit wider, maybe make the river a bit closer over here, so it's better for all the villagers and stuff. Like, yeah, it's a fun game to get lost in, basically.
I don't understand. It's funny. This is the second time we've had a guest on. So we had Charisma Williams last episode, and she was like Animal Crossing, and she started talking about it. And I mentioned this to my wife, who is a huge Animal Crossing fan now. She's not a gamer, and I gave her the Switch. I said, I'll just put Animal Crossing in front of you, and I just walked away. And it's every night, and it's got to the point where like a friend of mine said my daughter has a dodo code and wants to do, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this means, so I was just like passing this to my wife, and she's like, yeah, my code's this, she can come visit anytime. And I'm just like, I don't know what's going on anymore. But
if she starts talking turnips, you should be worried.
Yes, I've asked her about turnips. She says, no, John, that's on Sundays. I'm like, okay, whoa.
Is that like the currency?
I have no idea.
It's the stock market of the game. You basically buy turnips on Sunday for the lowest price. Like each Sunday the price is different. You try to get it in at a low price, and then every day the store in your town basically offers you a certain price for turnips, and you try to basically buy low, sell high, and people actually go to other people's islands because you don't always get a good price every week, and there's literally like a whole website I think called like turnipexchange.com or something where people put their islands up and they basically say like, hey, mine are selling at 600 bells right now, and if you want to get them you need to give me like 3 gold things and all these resources and like 40,000 currency and this and that just to come over and sell your freaking turnips. It's like, no thanks, I'm fine.
We were laying in bed. She'd gone to sleep. Right, I swear she would have been asleep for like half an hour, and I happened to scroll through my newsfeed and I saw a Polygon article that said swimming and diving is coming in an update to Animal Crossing, and I just said it out loud, and I've never like. My house could be on fire. My kids could be like, Mom, we're starving to death. Feed us. Get out of bed. I've never seen it like, what? Diving? What? It's just like, okay. I know you really like the game. It's all right.
It's actually a feature from the previous game that's being reintegrated into the new one. So for people who played the previous ones, it's kind of like, oh, nice. Because it's funny because when they launched the game, it's like it launched missing a couple of like features that were in the previous one on launch day, basically. And it's clear that they're trying to go for this model where the base experience is there and quite solid, and each couple of months they're going to be adding old features back in as something feeling kind of fresh and new. But to be honest, I haven't found it that terrible, because like it just gives you a reason to check in every month or something, because there's new stuff being added on the base systems, because usually they do like seasonal content and stuff, but bringing in a whole new component like the diving stuff, it's not like groundbreaking gameplay by any stretch of the imagination. It's a new way to collect more stuff. But basically it's a nice little surprise. We're like, oh cool, it changes up the routine a little bit. It's not just smacking rocks and trees now. I can go in the water for 5 minutes. It's just a nice little surprise, I guess. But that's what I've been playing.
Sounds like I need to buy that game.
Yeah, and to be honest, I love that it seems to be a game that ticks a lot of people's boxes in a way that the more hardcore games don't. It's like my wife, I've tried to get her into also. The only closest I've ever come to her actually playing a console game before Animal Crossing was Forza Horizon 2, when she just had our little boy, and he was just this, the pooping, noisy mess.
The lump.
And she would sit him in this thing, and she'd just play Forza Horizon 2 while she was on maternity leave all day between feeds. So I'd get home from work, and she'd just be there rocking him with her foot on this little chair. That's the closest she ever came, but then she just fell out of it and she never went back in. But Animal Crossing, she seems to have found her game. That is the one. Maybe she'll be a Nintendo fangirl for the rest of her life. Who knows? But it's good. It's good. So you've been with Moon for how long? Have you been with Moon Studios now?
I think I just passed my 4-year anniversary with Moon.
Oh, so wow. You got to work on. Did you get to work on Ori? Like the Ori 1? Because obviously Ori 1 was... No. So you would have come in for Ori 2.
Yeah, I was
from
actually...
Ubi,
Yeah. I was working on the Rayman series for about 5 years before. So I worked on Rayman Origins all the way up until the most recent one on phones, until I left, basically. Fiesta, Jungle Run, Adventures, or Rayman Origins and Legends on consoles, basically. And so I was working on that for basically 5 years at the same studio. And Ori 2 had just basically gotten started. Nothing was announced or whatever. But through a connection who applied to the studio, who basically didn't really have the experience necessary to be a level designer, but he reached out because he was interested. He was told, nicely by Moon, basically, come back in a few years when you have more experience, but we appreciate your interest and all that kind of stuff, which you don't usually always get from an employer or a potential employer. Sometimes they just ignore you. But it was kind of surprising that he was like, hey, they actually, gave me a nice, decent response. He told me at a party, like, I applied to Moon. Have you seen Ori? And I'm like, I've seen trailers, but I haven't played it yet. I mean, I guess it looks really nice and everything, but I haven't played it, which is weird because I'm a huge platforming fan. But because I don't have an Xbox, or I didn't have an Xbox at the time, and my computer was a piece of garbage, like I'm mostly a console gamer, it didn't pop into my radar for something to actually play at that moment. Yeah. And so they contacted me on LinkedIn. He said, hey, do you want me to mention your name to the studio? And I was like, well, why not? And then they sent me a message like the next day saying, hey, do you want to have a talk on Skype about working with us on our next game? And then I signed the NDA in the call, and then he was like, so we're working on Ori 2. Would you be interested? And it's like, hell yeah. I mean, like artsy, immersive platformers are kind of my jam at that point. Like working on Rayman was cool, but
it seemed like a good fit.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, they were looking for people with experience making, good, solid platforming levels. But there was this nice, obvious, parallel between what a Rayman level looks like and an Ori level, in the sense that they're both very artistic, and there's a lot of different considerations that come into making a level with that level of artistic, fidelity or something. Let's say it's not a flat, grid-based level like a lot of platformers are. It's very organic. It's very natural feeling. The art and the design are kind of like this, And so knowing somebody who worked in a game very similar in that degree, it was quite valuable to reach out and basically try to recruit me on the team. And then he basically said, have you played Ori? And I was like, no. And then he said, oh, okay, well, here's a code. Go play it and we'll talk later in the week. So then I played through it in like one day or something like that. We had a follow-up call. It was a great game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he asked me on the interview, so what could we have done better? And so then I
That's
told
a
him like my
great
honest
question.
thoughts and stuff
Yeah,
like
it is.
that. And
That's a
he
good
was
interview
like,
question.
and he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much in line with how we feel about it too, you know. So it's like we're on the same wavelength. Gave me a small test or something to do, and that was pretty much it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So from a level design perspective, because like I enjoy creating Halo multiplayer maps. I have done for years. But Ori 2, the way the map is connected is probably because it's, you know, Metroidvania as well as a platformer. Like how and even now, like when I play through that, and I've played through it twice now, the way bits are connected in, you know, and you have to come back and, oh, you haven't got that ability yet. Like, how many iterations does something like that have to go through before you're like, yep, that's it, that's the one? Because I can imagine that must be nuts to try and hold all those connected paths and when things should unlock and how it could connect to the snowy biome or the desert biome and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys manage that as like a project from concept to ship?
I mean, it's a really tricky process, right? There was we kind of like fired on different directions at the same time. So basically the creative director Thomas Mahler, he was also like the core level designer. He did most of the level design on the first game. He, like, as much as he, you know, he's spread thin doing the creative direction, at his heart he's like he's a level designer, and he misses it when he doesn't get a chance to, right? So he basically likes to take the start of the game, like literally the first scene that you wake up in the actual overworld, and build out organically from there. Because I think he's a you know, trained sculptor, I think is what he studied before doing anything game related, like traditional sculpture. And I think there's something there about the way that he likes to naturally build a space and like mold it outwards and watch it grow organically. And that way he also understands, what did I already show the player up until this point, and where can I take it from there?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we can't just build a game out like that when we know that we have to have X different areas with unique gameplay elements and themes and stuff that also need to go through an R&D process. You know, we have to develop mechanics, we have to develop the artwork and all this kind of stuff. So while that part of the world was being worked on kind of organically from very early in the game until basically the end, and being iterated on and reworked every so often, right? There were other designers in the team, like myself, working on isolated prototypes of other areas. So for example, I was someone personally very implicated in the Windswept Wastes, where you get the burrow ability, where you get to dig around and tunnel in the sand.
Yeah.
I was sort of heading up the R&D on that with the programming guys and the art guys, and doing a lot of the sketches and level design blockouts and things. And I eventually was the one that mostly would put together the environment and all that kind of stuff. But that was done very separate from the rest of the game world. I mean, all the areas were relatively separate. And then at a certain point, you start to think about how the world is structured on a high level. And a lot of that came in through the story process, because you start to think about, okay, what's the story we're trying to tell? Where do we want Ori to go? What does he have to do in the story? Where does he have to end up at certain points? And you realize, like, oh crap, we want the player to have to go from this story point to this story point now, but those areas are really far from each other, and they have to go through 3 other areas to get there. That doesn't make sense, because each area needs to have its beat, its proper timing, and everything else. And so we had to like shuffle around whole areas and be like, this area would fit better if it's connected here, but then what about this one? Well, that has to go over there. And if you look, like, we had to sort of like on paper, before actually building all of them, or kind of like at the same time as building them separately from each other, we had to like do this sort of Tetris-y thing to figure out how does the world fit together. And then at a certain point, when you feel confident, you start jamming them together like Lego bricks. And then you start, you know, crafting the connections and iterating, and like, it's just, we have to work on sort of all of it in its totality, and the interconnected parts and how it all like layers together and stuff. It comes in at a certain point in the process, and then you start developing more organic, you know, connections between them, and you push and pull and manipulate things. But you also have to keep in mind, like, for example, for the Windswept Wastes, that was one of the earliest areas that we actually got to a decent production ready state, because it was the E3 demo, I believe, in 2018. And so it was the first area that was really like proper art, sound effects, all this kind of stuff, you know. And it was the first time people were going to get to play it on the show floor, so it had to be accessible enough to introduce the basic mechanics, not just the new burrowing technique that we wanted to show off, but like the metrics had to be set up in such a way that people could jump comfortably, use the other abilities and all that kind of stuff. But in the actual game, this area is basically one of almost the penultimate area of the game.
Yeah.
In theory, like if you go the perfect way you're supposed to for the story, you pass through there, big challenge, final dungeon, and then final boss. And so now this thing that you designed to be relatively easy for any random person to get their hands on and play and have a good time has to suddenly be this late game challenge, you know?
Yeah.
And so then obviously we have to go back and reevaluate what are all the abilities that we've given the player until this point, and what are the challenges they've had to overcome, what's the density of spiky walls that we need to have in this area, you know? But the benefit of like the fact that it was an area that was so heavily focused on its own unique mechanic, the burrowing, that process of introducing the new mechanic and escalating the challenge and ramping up to like a really big ultimate, you know, master challenge of it, that pretty much just stayed the way it was, because obviously that was only seen for the first time here. So in isolation, that works fine, no matter how many challenges you've had until now. But we had to balance the rest of the environment for like, what enemies have you fought until now, or how tricky have the jumps been, or the puzzle complexities and things, you know? So it's really, like, having worked on a game like Rayman before that was just level-based, where you really take a level and you say, this is your theme,
it's the end.
Explore it from start to finish, cool, like our theme park ride or something. It's such a different beast than something like this, where you have to think, how many times is a player going to pass through this one goddamn room and still have to find something interesting to do the 15th time they've passed through it? You know, it's such a different and difficult design challenge, you know? And so it was interesting that even with my experience on platformers, there was so much I had to learn in the process of making this game that I didn't really know before, because it's an entirely different thing. And honestly, kudos to Thomas for deciding to tackle a freaking Metroidvania as his first like level design professional game or something. Like, you could have taken something a little bit less complicated. But
it's interesting because the way Ori's movement setup works is that combat is movement, like with Bash and things like that, and that I think lends itself to doing that traversal back and forth a lot more than other games where you might just walk through the room, you know, because Bash just allows you to almost skip through or flow through, and it's always a joy to do it. So I think Bash is probably one of the key mechanics that makes that fun, because even just like messing with the little frogs or some of the bugs that you end up fighting just to get through, like, I don't care about fighting you, I'm just going to ping off you and do the extra high jump up there and stuff like that. I can't imagine having to try and put something like that together, to be honest with you, because it sounds like trying to lay the track before a train whilst it's all kind of hurtling behind it. But I think to a degree that's probably game development in a nutshell, right?
Oh yeah, like it totally. Because for example, like we'd never done boss battles, or at least let's say the studio hadn't done boss battles in Ori 1. They did escape sequences, and boss battles are a whole other thing, you know. And so while we were trying to figure out how to up the game in terms of level design and other mechanics and new combat system, which was also new because obviously the combat in the first game was pretty simple compared to what we managed to do for the second one, all of these new things that we were figuring out while at the same time trying to already start building levels despite not having all the answers to all these questions. That's game development in general. And it's always difficult and stuff. The magical moment is when everything starts to take shape and come together in the final months of the project, or, you know, if you're lucky, the final year or maybe 2 years before. But, you know, realistically, stuff starts to come together quite late. And when you can finally play through the whole game and see how it flows and all that kind of stuff, it starts to feel quite magical, you know. And then some parts you want to kill yourself because it doesn't work as well as you had imagined in your head, and now you have to like work really hard to figure out what's not working there. But it's just game development in general. It's really not a very straightforward process. You know, you're constantly bouncing around and iterating on things, and then dropping this topic for a short while or for a decent while you focus on other things. And then you have to eventually revisit this and all that kind of stuff. It's not an easy thing to wrap your head around, that's for sure. So
I think entitled gamers listening, it's not just, the devs should just do this. You know, it's never that simple. And it's interesting. I've played a bunch of in development games, right, over the years, from, you know, betas and alphas and things like that. And it always surprises me when they give you a genuine alpha. And I think, you know, where it's genuinely like, this is horrific. Like, if you tried to release this as something, traditionally games that are released as betas before launch are polished.
It's the full game.
They're polished within an inch of their lives to be playable for the average consumer, whereas real alphas that are going to crash or overheat your console or, placeholder animations where the guys are just stickmen that just stand there because no one's done the animation or the artwork for that character yet. It's a whole different kettle of fish, and I guess I would really struggle with that. And it's one of I've always wanted to be, and go into game development and level design and things like that. But the selfish part of me just loves the magic of playing the bit at the end and not having to see it built. Because
that's something that's really difficult when you do make games, right? Is that you never get the chance to experience the thing that you worked on as a fresh, like a player would, and really experience it that way. So we're making it, we play it and we think this is good, this is fun, right? But we're assuming that if we didn't have the knowledge that we have now, a fresh player, whatever, that this is going to be good and fun and whatever. And obviously we rely on play tests and other external opinions to help validate those suspicions that we have, But it's really difficult, and it's kind of a shame when you think about it, because some of the reactions that we get from people, especially on Ori, because of the whole heartfelt story angle, which Rayman didn't have, that was just slapping your friends around and squeaky toy noises. But with Ori, we really tried to do something special in terms of like emotion, and like obviously the first one set a certain precedent, and we were like, how do we up that, Yeah. And it would be, and seeing some of the reactions from people having played the game and saying like this broke me or this or that, like they really appreciated the game like on a certain level that I could never as a player, because I'm too deep into it. I'm too involved. I know too much about it, about what it is.
You know how the sausage is made.
Yeah, I mean, and it's or for example, something that somebody's like, oh, this is so annoying, I don't know why they did this, and it's like, I know exactly why we did it, and trust me, there was no better alternative, right? But I'm not going to sit here and lecture you for an hour on why we took that decision. Just trust me when I say it was not a 5-second decision, But it would be nice to be able to sort of get amnesia once and play through something I worked on and be like, I appreciate it as a player, or I might trash it to hell and say, wow, what were these developers thinking?
These guys are nuts.
Who knows?
I was going to say, you mentioned before we started recording how much of a fan of Nintendo you were, and of course Rayman as a platformer is probably, I'm guessing, a little more linear than something like Ori, which is a more pure Metroidvania. What as a little bit of a level designer, was there any inspiration from like Super Metroid or Metroid or anything like that?
You mean on Ori?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because I jumped in for the sequel. So obviously the biggest inspiration for the sequel was the first game. And you don't really need to start looking too much at the other Metroid games, Metroidvanias, Castlevanias, in terms of, let's say, like level design stuff to really learn too much, because the first game, they already went through that process. So it was kind of, I mean, obviously playing those games and understanding what they did differently or in some ways maybe better than the first game, that's always valuable knowledge. But I think for the most part, it was just trying to get into the mindset of like what a Metroidvania is. So one of the ones that I played that I really appreciated was Guacamelee. I actually played that one before I joined Moon Studios. I really liked it, but I mean the humor. I mean, I actually live in Mexico right now, and before I lived in Mexico, I played Guacamelee. But I'm from California originally, so obviously, like, I grew up with a lot of Mexican influence in the culture around me, the food especially, and so I appreciated all the little tongue-in-cheek, goofy, nods to Mexico, or maybe they're not exactly subtle either, but the whole like vibe of Guacamelee I really appreciated. But it was also really fun as a Metroidvania, But something I noticed with like Metroidvania, with like a Guacamelee or even Metroid, because I did a guest lecture recently talking about creating the world of Ori and stuff. And in coming up with the presentation for that, I was looking for interesting things to talk about. And one thing I noticed was like in stuff like Guacamelee, when they gate off certain areas, for future abilities, what they seem to do for the most part is have like, here's a block that's green. If you have the ability that breaks green blocks, you'll be able to get past this. Here's a yellow block. If you have the yellow ability, you're going to get through it. Here's the blue block.
Shadow
Here's
Complex
the purple
was
one.
Exactly the same. Like, here's the spiky stuff you need the spiky stuff gun for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or for example, in the Guacamelee 2, here's a purple block for the new chicken abilities, So it's like, it's not that it's necessarily bad design. Like, it gets the job done, it functions, and people understand what it is. But for us, something like that on the nose doesn't really cut it. We want to make sure that it feels organic and natural, because so much of our world is meant to be like this believable organic place, and then just putting those artificial blockers that feel like obviously some designer just placed that there just because, it kind of takes you out of it, So we had to try to do our own thing, And so, for example, one of our areas is blocked off by this giant sleeping bear, right? And that's basically the same function as the purple block in Guacamelee, but you don't feel it when you get there. You're just like, holy crap, there's a big snoring bear in my path. What the hell is this, And it just feels different and memorable in a different way.
It's more organic.
It's more organic. It feels natural, and it raises these thematic and story questions. Who is this character? Why is he asleep? And what lays beyond? And this and that. Whereas if you just found a red door, a red block there, you'd be like, oh, I guess I'll get an ability later that lets me break this, and that's it. You'd leave, So, like, sometimes it's also valuable to look at the competition to kind of see like where there's like an element missing or something that could be sort of one-upped a little bit in some way, and then try to see, well, what could we do to maybe improve on that. But don't get me wrong, like, I've played Metroidvanias and I love them to death in general. Like, I have a lot of respect for whoever makes any of these, because they're not easy to make. And I'm not saying that Ori's like the best ever, right? But I don't remember us saying like, here's thank you, like, here's a whole bunch of like screenshots from other games that we're gonna try to like, we'll copy this or we'll look into that or something. We really try to like do our own thing and build games the way that that allow us to realize the kind of experience that we want to make.
I have an interesting question, and I appreciate if you can't answer this one, because I don't know if there are any plans, but when Ori 1 released, it was widely loved and critically acclaimed and all of that fun stuff, and but there were some niggles, I guess, in general, that I think Moon and Thomas knew, like the difficulty spikes, that people were like, the Ginso trees just kicked my ass, and I didn't know that this was gonna come, and other things like that. And obviously they went back and did the definitive edition before, I presume, or while pre-prod was in on the go for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I remember seeing a trailer for Will of the Wisps that had minecarts in it, and enemies that don't exist in the current game. And I guess it's a question, and if you can't answer it, if you say no, that's just cut content, that's how it is. But is there ever a desire to do something similar and say, hey, here's some single player DLC, or here's a new unlocked area like they did with Definitive Edition? Or do you think it's pure, everyone's driving on that second project or that new project now?
I mean, there's really nothing to announce, and I can't, even if there was, I couldn't really be the one to announce it. I mean, basically, stuff happens. Like, you're producing a game, you make content, you test things, you have to show stuff years in advance, and some things just don't find a way into the final game for whatever one reason or another.
Cutting room floor.
And it always feels sexy to be able to be like, you know what? If we were to do a DLC, we could bring that stuff back in and really make it work. Obviously, everybody's thought of that. You know, like that. It's impossible not to, when it's like something that was there at some point or another in the project, even ideas that were just on paper that never made it past paper. You could think, but if we did a DLC, we could totally add this thing in there. I mean,
I
for
can't
now,
imagine trying to pick that apart and like, let's just stitch an extra level in there. Like, no.
No. Well, that's the other thing, right? The game is done. The story's done. Like, and honestly, we're just, at least from my perspective, I'm quite happy with how everything turned out, all things considered. And I'd rather personally just like let it be what it is. People seem to appreciate it. We did some post-release patches and things to sort of iron out, glitches and issues that might have been present, especially on like PC and stuff, which is always kind of a crapshoot depending on who's got what build. Somebody's like, this isn't running on my computer like it should be, and then they send us their specs and it's like clearly a potato, and it's like, I mean, at some point there's got to be a bottom,
money, buddy.
I
was about to say, it's funny you mentioned that. You guys, I know when we had Thomas on, I think we asked him that is he looking forward to working on consoles that have that SSD baseline now? That must be something that like a lot of you guys are excited about, I guess, with the next gen consoles.
I mean, to be totally honest, like, I'm not really a huge tech guy when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like if you tell me games are going to look better, look prettier, and run smoother on new consoles, I'm a happy camper. But really for me, like usually it's other people in the team that are trying to worry about making stuff run on the given console or target hardware. I'm usually the guy that's just pushing for quality as much as possible. So if it allows me to push for that quality with less pushback from programmers, I'm all for it. Basically, let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I guess that's part of that technology leap, isn't it? You know, you have an SSD, that quality could probably be achieved easier. You get less hitching when loading in assets and things like that.
Just a smoother experience in general, which is always desirable. I mean, honestly, I'm not a huge tech guy, but when I was told that I need to get an SSD for my work computer when I built my rig for Moon, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And I felt the difference when I was loading up Windows, and it was like, boom, and I'm like, okay, I see what the deal is with an SSD now. Holy shit, this makes a pretty big difference. You know, I'm never going back. So I'm guessing it's the same thing.
And then you spend so much time with an SSD, and you go back to an old system with a hard drive, and you're like, wow, this takes a million years. How did I ever stand this? How did I ever put up with this?
Like dial-up internet or something.
Yeah.
How you ever put up with waiting to connect to something just to then load a page in 10 minutes or something? Like it's just not. You can't think of it anymore.
And I'm guessing lockdown hasn't affected Moon as much as it would most studios.
So that's interesting. Yeah. No, because we're distributed. So basically, everybody works from home anyway. I mean, obviously, it has personal impacts on each member of Moon, because we're not just robots making games. We also have families and lives. But for the most part, in terms of actually like work and schedules and everything else, we're pretty much like everything's running relatively the way it always does. And honestly, it's kind of a testament to it's like a very modern way of working, I think. Like I think that more companies probably are realizing now that it's possible to do maybe part-time at the office, or maybe not even buy as big of an office space and make it optional for some people, and have more like communal desks that people can come to if they have a meeting or something. But it's totally feasible and doable. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but like if you're the kind of person that can be autonomous and regulate yourself at home, keep yourself busy, and like be passionate despite the fact you don't have people around you all the time in an office or something, it's totally possible. So lucky for us as a studio, the whole pandemic situation hasn't really had a negative effect on that.
It's already your operating model, effectively.
And a lot of friends, and a lot of friends that like fellow like industry members or whatever reached out to me near the beginning of it, like, hey, like how do you guys handle this? Because they're all like, I have a friend who works at Mojang, and it's like, oh, they're sending my desk to my apartment so I can work from home and this and that. And someone else, another studio, like, I'm a producer at this studio and now I have to manage all my team from at home. How am I supposed to do this and stuff? And it's like, it's just you get used to it, and you have to find people that are able to work that way too, because some people need a lot of hand holding, and we don't have the ability to have the patience for that. We just can't. Like we need people.
You need to just be
handle
able to get
themselves.
on with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's interesting seeing how the industry has coped though, and especially, and I feel for Sony and Microsoft at this point in time, because launching, I would imagine, not that I know, but launching a new technology product and ensuring a slate of games that are ready for an already unfair point in time that can't move is hard. And to throw a pandemic in the mix and expect that same level of quality, and you still got to hit the same date, like I don't envy any of those teams, and they probably had a really horrible year. I mean, I think everybody's had a really horrible year, but from a game development perspective, I can't imagine that's been any fun whatsoever.
I think there were actually quite a few games that were supposed to come out around the same time as Ori that all got pushed because, and I'm guessing it was because of this whole thing that was happening. I mean, it was kind of nice for us, I guess, at the end of the day, because we got to stay on track, But even like Cyberpunk, if I recall, it was supposed to come out in like April or something. Really, it was. We were kind of like, oh man, this thing's really gonna like take all the oxygen along with Final Fantasy VII and The Last of Us and everything, and all of them just got like pushed progressively later on in the year, because it had just taking a toll on everything, really.
I reckon there might be a couple more pushes too.
Yeah. There'll be more cancellations, or delays, I should say. Cancellations isn't the right
I reckon
word.
there will be.
One thing that I find interesting, though, about this, the whole E3 situation, like, so I mean, I remember the last press conference that Nintendo did years ago. That was horrible. I think they ended with fake fireworks. Like, this is what fireworks look like in Nintendo Land, and it was like the cheesiest, shittiest ending ever. That everyone was just like, "What the hell did I just watch?" That's your last one more thing, you know? Like, and basically,
God.
I think it was after that one they started doing Nintendo Directs because I think they realized, you know what, this is like, why are we trying? Or also with Miyamoto with the Wii Remote thing for the Zelda demo that didn't work. It was super embarrassing. Like, honestly, it's just like, why bother with all that stuff when you can just basically put together a nice sizzle reel and be like, here's what's coming in the next few months, and boom, boom, boom. And honestly, I love the Nintendo Direct system. I like the fact that they just show up every once in a while and I get to see what's coming, and there's no like trying to put on a whole show. Like the whole Ubisoft always does the really embarrassing comedian stuff, which just nobody asked for, you know, and they just keep trying and trying, and it's kind of embarrassing, you know. So the interesting thing I think from this year is all of the other companies just started doing more Nintendo Direct style presentations because they can't do anything else. And I'm actually enjoying it. I'm like, you know what? I kind of appreciate this format in general overall more than watching these press conferences and stuff the way that they traditionally were. Even the one from Sony for the PlayStation 5, it was just game. Nobody's standing on there giving this corporate bullshit speech about how many, like all the specs and this and that, and like, you know, basically pandering to the investors. No, it's just like, get on with what people want to see. And so I think I'm kind of hoping that kind of trend carries forward after this whole thing blows over, and that more companies realize, like, we don't need to do all these big live events. We can just basically get the information directly to people online, because that's what the culture is now, you know.
Well, I will say
the sentiment that I keep reading online is people miss the crowd reaction, and I'm like, I don't know. It's
only
not a
Microsoft that invite people in to cheer anyway.
Just add a laugh track like the old sitcoms, you know, like
Big Bang Theory.
Laugh track, yeah, exactly.
Have you ever watched Big Bang Theory without a laugh track?
Leave Big Bang Theory alone. And Friends.
Friends is fine. I grew up in that era, right? I know it's problematic now.
With friends without a laugh track, it's fine. I fill up that space with my own laughter. It's still a classic. Okay,
Friends is amazing.
We started rewatching How I Met Your Mother again as well, and I grew up with that one too, and I also loved it. But Big Bang Theory was one of those interesting ones where the first few seasons, well, I was in high school, I think, at the time. The first few seasons I loved because I was like, hey, a mainstream TV sitcom about geeks and gamer things. This is really cool. You know, they're talking about comics, they're talking about games and Mario and this and that. That's fun. Usually it's just, you know, people drinking and talking about normal life stuff.
Yeah.
But then the longer it went on, the more embarrassing it got to watch, and it was just kind of like, I'm not really feeling this anymore.
That's so true. Oh dear. Sorry, Cairo, you were going to say you were mid-sentence, and I think we overrode you.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Not anymore. Moments pass.
I played something else earlier this week, which I was genuinely surprised at, and that was Grounded. And I don't know if you. This was announced. This was like a 13 or 14 man and woman team at Obsidian in a genre that they've never touched, which is survival. And it's basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the movie, right? And I saw it announced, and I was like, that's interesting, but I wasn't... Survival's not a particular genre that I love. I had the DayZ bug when... or DayZ for you Yanks.
Thank you.
But I had that bug when it was right at the peak, when the mod was really cool, and you had those moments where you had all the gear, and then sniper came out of nowhere, and it was all over, and it was a whole new thing, and it felt really new and fresh. But I jumped into this demo, and I am surprised at how polished it is for something that is early access, and how much I enjoyed it. And they've really nailed being. I am scared of spiders. And they've got an arachnophobia mode, but, you know, I'm not going to wuss out here. I'm going to go in, face my fear. Man, I was terrified. Like, they start this little, like, drum beat when the spiders are coming. Giant spiders, you're like the size of an ant, and this massive, like, hunting spiders coming after, and they're dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. It was horrible. But I loved it, and I can't actually wait for them to release the kind of co-op-y part where you can build bases and have fun with friends. I don't know if you guys have tried it, but I would recommend giving it a little go. It was really good fun. I really was surprised at how good it was for 14 people. But
I haven't tried it, but I saw the trailers, And I mean, I as a kid, I loved the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. So obviously, it sort of it has that appeal to it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I like the thing is survival games aren't really my thing personally.
No, same.
And I'm also not a big like online, like basically like online shooters and stuff like Fortnite and all these other kinds of things. Like I never really got into it. So for me, like it's not really my jam. But I think it's cool that they went for something really different thematically from the rest, and and it sounds like they really leaned into it as well. Like they didn't just say, "Oh, you're small, but you're doing X, Y, Z." They're like, "Okay, what does this mean? What are the enemies going to be like? What is the environment going to be made out of?" And that's always kind of fun to explore. So it's nice to see that they did that.
They did some really clever things as well, like with depth of field. So you're walking around what is a lawn, but it feels like this bizarre forest because each blade of grass goes up, and all of the resources kind of make sense. Like you can drink like out of tiny little dirty, what would be nothing to us, it would just be wet ground, but they're like rivers in the game. Mm-hmm. But if you want clean water, if you wait until morning, the dew will form like on the bottom of a leaf, and you can reach up and just get clean water. And it's just really little clever nods and attentions to detail that I was surprised at to see, and I'm intrigued to see how it will do because I think it's pretty unique from a survival point of view, and I'll give it a go. The other survival game I really tried was Ark, and that's because dinosaurs are cool, but it was such a janky, awful thing. I just couldn't stomach it for long, so I gave up.
That's something I don't really have patience for like those kinds of like. I mean, I didn't play Ark. But like, for example, I saw people playing stuff like Rust and all these other games at the time, and I would watch it. Or for example, like my wife, we got for free on PS Plus a few months back Conan Exile or something.
Yeah.
And just watching it, and I'm like, this is such a janky looking mess of a game. Like it's just it looks so awkward. It doesn't feel good to play or anything like that. And I can't really get into it. Like I'm a sucker for like a really well polished, fine tuned experience. But this is the age of early access and. I mean, to be honest, like I'm probably gonna be called an idiot for saying this, but like I remember very well years ago in high school, my best friend basically telling me, "Oh man, I started playing this really cool looking game recently. Like, what is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's called Minecraft, and it's like this weird, these pixels, and you're like mining stuff and building things." And I looked at the videos, and I was like, whatever floats your boat, man. Like, yeah, sure. If it's fun, it's fun. And I think he found it on some obscure forum. It was being shared around. It wasn't at all a phenomenon at the time. And just from first glance, like it wasn't really my thing, And well, haha, jokes on me because like I really didn't see this gem for what it was. And actually, I remember that same friend. Maybe I should really invest in him more. But like he also was playing Demon's Souls when it first came out, and he was saying, "Dude, I'm playing this action game, and it's like really fucking hard, but I like it, and it's really punishing me and stuff." And I'm like, I'm looking at it again. It looked a bit janky at the time, and it didn't. I mean, it was just constant death every corner, and I'm like, really? Is that really the kind of game you're going for? And again, jokes on me because it spawned this huge genre, and it's like larger than life thing now.
Yeah.
God.
But yeah, certain.
Well,
games,
I mean,
I don't know.
One of the biggest games on the planet is Roblox, and you want to talk about
if you want to talk jank, have you tried it, Chris? Roblox, honestly, just for your own perverse curiosity, like grab it on Android or on the Xbox, on anything. It's there on everything. But these are user created mini games using pre-built and available assets within the tool, but everything about it is awful. We're talking 15 frames per second. We're talking microtransactions like built in for people that make these weird, obscure, that definitely infringing on the lots of copyrights.
Kids love it.
Yeah, my little boy is obsessed.
So is my daughter.
And I'm sitting here like I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot barge pole. Like I'm a guy that likes. I want a smooth 60 FPS at a minimum nowadays, and I don't want a game to waste my time.
It does run on anything, though. To be fair to Roblox, it does run on anything, and I'm actually surprised the Switch version hasn't come yet, because when that game releases on Switch, it's going to take off on a whole other level, I reckon.
Scares me. Kids,
well, it's one of those games where you build stuff, right? That's what you said?
Well, not like Minecraft. It's more... people literally make their own games within Roblox. It's hard to
like
explain.
Dreams or
It's a really
like
bad version of Dreams. That's
Yeah, I
Dreams
guess you
or
could
Little
call it
Big
that.
Planet or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you can make little.
Yeah. Actually, Little Big Planet's probably a better analogy.
Yeah, those like. This is probably a personal thing for me, but ever since I started doing game stuff professionally, I can't really find myself to enjoy games where you have to build your own stuff in them, because it feels like work. So as much as I see people loving the hell out of Mario Maker, which I know that myself, before I made games, I would have played the hell out of it myself, right? Because I was a modder before I started doing this professionally, because I wanted to make stuff. But when Little Big Planet came out, I think I was already in college studying games and other things, and just when I look at those games now or Dreams, that looks like magic, but it's work. I do enough work at work when it comes to this stuff, and so at least for Animal Crossing, it's just this nice little I'm tending to my little island, it's just relaxing. It's not is this level going to be fun for people that play it? It's no, my animals are little AIs that follow whatever paths I put down, so who cares? Whatever, just for fun.
It's weird. I mentioned earlier, and folks that watch this podcast will know, I do a lot of Halo 5 and Halo 3 and Halo, all of the Halos, multiplayer level design in Forge. And I like doing that tool because like Animal Crossing, I kind of zen out and like making spaces and seeing how people interact on them and come up with interesting maps that aren't typically Halo, so like pirate ships and stuff like that. And but then when I look back at the stats of how long I've sat in that tool for, it's like I'm not playing with anyone. I'm literally building something only maybe 15 people might play it. But for some reason I've decided that I'll waste 48 hours total just building, perfecting one little thing just because it looks nice, and then taking pictures of it and being yeah, that looks cool. Why do I do that? I don't know. I still really enjoy it.
It's fun to make stuff. I mean, when I was a modder, or for example, my brother, he was also getting into modding. He's not a game developer professionally. He did something else. I decided to keep doing it. But when we were modding Warcraft 3, that's what we got into. He literally tried to recreate Halo in a Warcraft 3 map, basically. He imported the ARM model with the gun and modded the camera, so it was a first-person perspective with WASD controls, and he actually made it so you could shoot, and he was trying to import the Warthog and get it to drive around and stuff, and never finished it. Probably spent hours and hours and hours trying to get that stuff working, but it's just fun to try and especially take a game that's not built for a certain thing and try to change it and make it into a totally different experience. It's always fun to try and do. Whether or not you succeed, well, who cares?
That's true. That's true. And I know that Ori celebrated a little milestone. Was it this week? Was it last week? 2 million.
I think so. 2 million players,
which must be pretty nice. So that's is that across Game Pass, Steam? Every platform it released on, presumably. Not sure if you know.
I think so. And I think it's probably a little bit more, but obviously 2 million. It's a sexy round number to show. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see that information that being shared and celebrated, and the community sort of appreciate showing their appreciation and stuff. Because you work on something like this, with so much, spend so much time and stress and passion and whatever, late nights trying to really make something special, and getting to see that many people played it, and seeing that at least a quarter of them finished it, which I think is a pretty decent stat all around. Not everybody finishes every game they touch, and knowing that a quarter of the people finished the entire story and got to see what we were trying to say, that, it feels great. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
And it's only the first few months, so we'll see how
many
more
that's true.
Yeah,
it's easy. It's easy to forget that it didn't come out that long ago.
Yeah,
time is just messy.
And honestly, some games they get their peak of players in the first couple of months, and then it just kind of dies down. And some games they just continue to steadily sell and get new players for years and years. And
Grand Theft Auto.
Well, that's
Grand Theft Auto 5. Never heard of it.
Yeah, but that comes releasing it on every console known to man for the next 50 years.
It's becoming the new Skyrim.
Oh god,
man, it's gonna be on everything. I saw an amusing meme, and it was it was a cowboy, but it had Rockstar's logo as a face, and there's a cow with like GTA 5 stamped on it.
Yeah,
and then it's just like it's just the udders, and then the cow's face like, not again.
I mean, honestly, if I really hope that there's not a single person that's been involved on that game, like working on that game from start until the latest port or something like that, because I mean they must have been working on the same game for like, I don't know, 10 years or more or something. Yep. Like I don't envy that position. I hope that they're cycling people out.
Literally 10 years.
Yeah. God, creatively, I would be just like, get me out of here, please. I know it's making money, but then there are different folks, right? People like just a steady paycheck, but I would imagine in that kind of industry, being creative is the whole point. And if you're stuck...
Well, there is something interesting about porting, I think, because for very technical like programmers that deal with ports, part of the fun, from what I can tell, is the thrill of getting it to run on the device that you're working on, right? So it's like, oh, we have to make a port and make something work on Android. All right, well, let's see what we can strip away. And well, I mean, for like, so something that I found
Switch, right?
Well, something I found interesting, right? Because the Switch port was happening for Ori and the Blind Forest while we were working on Will of the Wisps, and I got to play test it and everything with a Switch dev kit to sort of ensure that the quality was good and everything like that. And it was just interesting that in the process of trying to make the game run better for the Switch and have like smoother animations and this and that, like the quality of the port in some ways actually surpassed quality of the definitive edition, like especially in terms of animations. Like it's much smoother, it's and everything else, because they found improvements and optimizations and other techniques to use. And so I'm guessing that for people that are porting a game to another device or whatever, sometimes there is this kind of just this fun creative challenge of how can we keep the same quality but for somehow make it cost way less RAM and CPU and GPU power to run. And then you get this sick thrill at the end of going like, ha, I know how stripped down that is.
Yeah, like The Witcher 3. The guys that ported that, they must have been like, Let's go.
Yeah.
Doom as well.
Doom, yeah. It's pretty amazing that the Switch can run as much as it can run. I think it's a testament to the developers, and how things can be optimized. And I guess that kind of segues us. So
definitely does.
It definitely segues us. So the news and the rumors about Microsoft's approach to next gen, they kind of won't stop going away. In that we know that they've announced and they've shown off the Xbox Series X. It's this most powerful console. They've got that trump card, I guess. But there's always been this rumor in the background, and they've said it previously, and then they've walked it back, or they've just shut up about it, about there being two consoles, and that second console is the rumored Lockhart, and that's meant to be effectively the 1080p box for next generation games.
Allegedly.
And it's 4 teraflops, like 7.5 gig of usable RAM, 10 gig total for for the actual system, so the OS can sit on it. But it's meant to have the same SSD, a slightly lower clocked CPU, and obviously a much lower GPU, so that it doesn't have to push 4K. And it's interesting seeing the amount of discourse and discussion around it, because so many people seem to think that it's going to hold back the generation of games from a technical perspective. And when I look at it from someone that's had a PC for like a decade or more and been in that space, it's the equivalent to me having a 2080 Ti or a GTX 1060.
970?
Yeah, whatever. And I guess, and I appreciate, as a level designer, the tech side might not be your area that is particularly of interest, but do you think that is a valid cause of concern when you see people pulling off miracles like The Witcher 3 on Switch and stuff like that? Obviously there are sacrifices, but games can be scaled nowadays from a technical perspective. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends, right? Because I think there are always going to be those teams and those companies that are pushing on the highest software, the strongest hardware, and they're pushing as hard as they can to squeeze as much as they can out of it to make like mind-melting experiences. That's not going to go away no matter what, right? Like that's always going to be there, but maybe from the sort of more run-of-the-mill studios, let's say, or the ones that are sort of churning out licensed content or things that are really just, it's making, straightforward productions for regular revenue and stuff, but they're not trying to break new ground. They're going to probably develop for the lowest common denominator, and just make sure that it runs on everything else. But they're not going to try to like, melt your mind with like the version that runs on the best hardware, because that's not necessarily maybe the aim of the game that they're trying to make or sell. Yeah. It reminds me of, like, for example, how Nintendo released the 2DS at some point when they had the 3DS, and it's like that. But the cool thing about it, I think, especially with the 2DS, is that kids don't really give a crap, right? Like, you give them a 2DS, they play the game. They don't care if there's no 3D. They don't care if it maybe looks a little different than on the 3DS. Like, what it means is that more people get to play games that couldn't play them before. And if you ask me, as a game developer, but also as a player myself, that's just a win all around, right? Having more price points and more entry points for people of different means to be able to get in and enjoy what we also enjoy, like, that in itself is really valuable.
It's a no-brainer,
and you're always going to have people pushing the industry forward. It's that's not going to go away. I don't know. That's the way I see it.
I think that's pretty much my view on it. I think it's the more that games can be played by anyone, not just the people that can push games to their absolute max, because games can scale. It just allows for healthier player bases. It allows for more people to enjoy stuff and find those niche products. Families, especially now with COVID and the economy and everything else, a cheaper price point, I think, makes a lot of sense. Be interesting to see if it comes to fruition, because for now, it is a rumor that just keeps cropping back up again. I think
it's funny, the only thing that makes me think. I mean, firstly, the funny thing is Microsoft never mentioned 2 consoles. They only ever mentioned a family of consoles, which could be 2, could be 3, could be God knows what. But the part that I find most interesting is anytime you've seen an interview with Phil Spencer, anytime you've seen an interview with Jason Ronald, any of these guys involved behind the scenes, no one brings up Lockhart.
Yep.
They don't ask about it. They don't go near it.
Yeah, and that strikes me as odd.
It's a little bit weird.
There's some publications reporting on it.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about when they talk to Phil or Jason or anyone at Microsoft, they never bring it up.
Yeah, that's probably a very quick question of
a little bit weird.
But we'll find out. We'll find out in a couple of months. Probably.
Yes, we will.
But we will. And speaking, I guess, of the July show, and I won't go too much into it because I know we've got some community questions at the end. But Phil Spencer did an interview where he talked about he watched the Sony show, and it was a couple of interesting comments that
he's also got a new name. Did you hear he's got a new name too?
Yeah, they spelt his name with an S on that Game Lab thing. Phil Spencer instead of, I don't know. It would sound the same. Like I can't blame the guy who wrote that subtitle.
It was just funny.
It was funny. I noticed you changed his name as well.
I did change his name in the Discord to Phil Spencer with the new spelling.
Yeah, I'm sure that will probably wind him up. But he said a couple of interesting things, right? He said he watched the show and he felt good, and one of our guys on our website foolishly types that up as a headline, right? Which is fair enough. He watched the show and he felt good, and as an Xbox fan site, I suppose, that's a perfectly reasonable headline to type. I don't really dive into the Fanboy Wars stuff too much, but oh my god, as the person that has the Twitter account on his phone, that one went a little bit all over the place. We had fanboys fighting the good fight in that comments thread.
Oh, man.
It was kind of sad. Like, real sad. There were list wars. There was, Xbox sucks. No, PlayStation sucks. And, man, it's just games. Like, guys, get over yourselves.
I had a guy... I got a notification last night. Some dude tagged Phil and called him an idiot. I'm like, Jesus, just
Twitter
relax, buddy. Just relax, buddy. It's okay.
Weird place. But the other one that I thought was more amusing was, I think you picked up on it from his interview. He said something like, I want our players to be immersed, hear the games and not hear our console, which was like some serious shade at the jet engines.
To be honest, though, I'm not sure he meant I'm not sure he intended that the way people took it.
Well,
because what the interviewer was saying to him in the lead up to that was how Sony made the PS5 look like something that wants all the attention in your living room or something like that. And it was going to be like a centerpiece. So I think Phil was more referring to the idea of the console blending into the background and let the games do the talking kind of thing.
So not like a Hawaiian shirt at a funeral.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
I think, or an Alienware router. But I took the snippet, put it on Twitter, and man, I did not expect that to blow up the way it did. And again, there was some serious fanboy wars going on in the comments under that tweet. It got full on.
Now, also, hang on about the Alienware router thing. That's a disservice to Alienware, okay? I have an Amplify Alien router right here next to me. It is the most gamer-looking piece of crap I've ever seen, with a green LED at the bottom. This thing is tiny. This thing is just a thin cylinder that stands up. The PS5 is worse than an Alienware router.
It's big. It is very big. It's like I'm legitimately worried about how much space it's going to take up.
I think one of my favorite PS5 memes that I saw going around was where they photoshopped some guy's head on top because it looks like it's a popped collar or something, you know?
That was me. Yeah. It was Chad Warden. I put Chad Warden's head on the PS5.
There's also ones where they put it horizontally and they put like eyes on it to make it look like the Pog emote.
Yeah.
That one's also great.
The memes
what
were
about
all
the
good.
duck bill?
Or the duck bill
was amazing.
The duck bill, yeah.
Or the one where it's like they took just some generic black router and they put one of those old school white binders around it and it was like PS5.
Oh man, it's interesting because like the rumor was that apparently, and you know, none of this is verified, right? So anyone listening, you know, don't take this with a truckload of salt. The rumor was that we had the big leak at the beginning of the year with all of the AMD test results that said, you know, Microsoft's going to have 52 CUs and all of this stuff, and that these other ones were lower powered, and it was all taken as, no, it's nonsense. But apparently, you know, the rumors were that Sony actually were planning on to enable backwards compatibility to be smoother than apparently it now is. To include a Jaguar CPU in again.
Correct.
As part of
No. So the rumor is that originally there was a PS5 slated for 2019.
Yeah.
And the 2019 PS5 allegedly had a Jaguar in it. A Jaguar CPU. So effectively the same CPU as the PS4 and Xbox One.
Which probably wouldn't have gone
the inspiration behind that was having 100% flawless backwards compatibility, which I actually don't mind. But I think the developers may have cracked the shits a little bit about having to work with a Jaguar CPU for another 7 years.
Yeah.
So they probably had to pivot and do something else there.
Yeah,
which is probably why we're in the situation we're in.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It genuinely continues to feel like a little bit of a 2013 reversal. You know, even as much as like, you know, journalists like Jason Schreier were saying that Microsoft were running hot and running behind, and yet the evidence, you know, that seems to me to be quite apparent is that it was the other way around from a you know, design perspective. I would never have thought, and I think Albert Pinello actually put a tweet out that, considering how long Sony have been in the gaming space and Microsoft were always the kind of underdog for a longest period of time, that we are now looking at a console that is smaller and faster than PlayStation. I would have never assumed that would happen. Not where Sony is arguably the hardware company, but I guess the Surface team are really pulling out all the stops for Microsoft lately.
And Nintendo just keeps doing whatever the hell they want to do.
And I like that. Thankfully. I like that Nintendo just doesn't try and be like another one of the HD twins. It's always got a unique focus on games. Like, how do you want people to play games?
I keep, every now and again, I keep digging up my post from 2014 on GAF, because Reset wasn't a thing back then. Back in 2014, I was telling people that Nintendo's next console is going to be a hybrid. They had no choice. They couldn't keep making traditional home consoles anymore, because if you take away the Wii, every Nintendo home console was selling less and less and less with each generation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Wii U was like... I actually love the Wii U myself, but the Wii U was like rock bottom. That was like Dreamcast levels of sales.
That's how it was good, right?
That's why I love the Wii U so much. And that's and that's why I said I'm like Nintendo can't keep going this way. Like they have to leverage their domination in the portable space and find a way to use that with a home console. Like it has to be a hybrid. They've got no other choice in the matter.
And I'm glad
3 years later.
I'm glad they did, because to be honest, like I respect them for having pushed so hard on the portable console space, because I mean, I grew up with Game Boy Advance. I played Golden Sun in the car for long car rides and stuff. Like I loved that stuff, and I'm sure that plenty of other people, and especially kids, were still enjoying DSs and everything else. But I think that they did the right thing in basically saying we have this really big chunk of the market that other companies just don't even care about, and we know how to make console games that everybody really appreciates and loves, like Mario Kart and whatever, right? We just they know what to do with both, and then just say let's combine them both into one supermarket and get everybody. And also it's great because they somehow tricked people into basically buying the Nintendo console as the portable side console for their bigger Xbox or PlayStation, when in reality it's the same as basically having a PlayStation 2 and a GameCube, you know? But it's like you feel different because you're like, oh, well, this is just my Switch, but this is my PlayStation. But really, like how many hours you're pouring into your Switch, like there's so much good stuff on there anyway. And honestly, like, especially now, I really appreciate it because my wife is a big gamer too. Actually, she probably games more than I do. Mostly because, you know, when you're working on them for so long, so many hours, when you're done working, for the most part, you just kind of want to like watch TV or do something else, right? But she loves gaming, and the nice thing with the Switch is that she can be and she's more of a Sony fan than I am. I'm more of a Nintendo guy, and so she can be sitting on with the TV playing the next biggest RPG, whatever she's crazy about, and I can be sitting there playing Mario Odyssey or Zelda or whatever. And when she's done, I just put it on the TV. It works like a charm. You know, it's really great. It's great. I think it's my favorite console right now and from a long time, and I think it's a really cool culmination of like everything Nintendo's been trying to basically do over their entire lifetime, basically as a company and building consoles. And I'm wondering what they're gonna do next. Like I don't know if they're just gonna do the same thing.
Do you think it's going to be like the Switch 2 that's just going to be the same but bigger and faster?
I think they've got to stick to the hybrid thing. They have to stick to the hybrid thing. Don't go back to the traditional
but you could argue that they should have done the Wii 2 because the Wii was such a success, and would anybody have really wanted a Wii 2? Like, and we only got the Switch because they decided let's try something even different, like in a different direction.
They
got a home run now, so
they were laying the groundwork for the Switch in the Wii U though.
Yeah,
like if you the Wii U, that form factor was there in the gamepad. You just couldn't walk more than 5 meters away from the console.
You couldn't even take a crap while playing on the Wii U. That's how you know that it wasn't successful.
Not good enough. Do better, Nintendo. Honestly.
If your walls were about this much too thick, you couldn't play it while going to the bathroom. But I
do like my Wii U though.
But no, I enjoyed it for the games, you know, and that's the thing Nintendo's always been good at. But the nice thing is that they really married like a great innovative console, successful like design and everything else, and they have the quality games that go with it, you know. So that's like a win-win. And the nice thing is when you saw the original trailer for the Switch, I think, right, where they showed the guy like taking it out, walking his dog, and he's playing on the bench while the dog's taking a crap, and you've got the girl who takes it to the rooftop party and stuff. It's funny because at first you go, what is this hipster marketing they're doing? Like nobody's gonna play like this. But actually, when the Switch came out, people were bringing it to parties with their friends when they're having beers at someone's house. They bring their Switch over and this and that. Like people use it the way that they pretty much marketed it because it's just it's so easy to do so. And the fact that you can play like games that look like Mario Odyssey, and even if Breath of the Wild isn't like the most gorgeous game in the world, it's still pretty stunning when you look at it on the Switch. With the lighting, the grass, and whatever. And running that in that package, or playing Smash on the go. Like at 60 FPS and everything else, like it's really impressive.
Actually, can I ask you, Chris? Do you prefer? I'd like to know your opinion on this. Do you prefer Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild?
It's really difficult. I mean, that's like apples and oranges, really. But I might say Breath of the Wild because when I was a kid, I was a Mario guy. Like I played 64 and Sunshine. Like Galaxy is probably one of my top 5 of all time. The first one, like it was really great. And Zelda was something I discovered later when I was a teenager, and I played all. I think the first one I played was Twilight Princess. So I have for me that was a good Zelda game, even though a lot of people don't really like it that much.
Love Twilight Princess.
But then I played all the classics and everything else. But Breath of the Wild, like after playing Skyward Sword, which was kind of like, for me, it was a slog at the time. I got what they were trying to do, and as a developer, I can see what another developer is trying to do and appreciate it for a different reason. Like, oh, that's a really clever idea for a dungeon, or oh, if this worked a little better with the waggle controls, it would have been amazing, you know. And I give them brownie points for it. But if I'm honest about it, like it wasn't as good as I would have wanted it to be. And playing Breath of the Wild, it was like they tried something so drastically different from the previous ones, and I did not expect to sink over like 120 hours into a Zelda game. You know what I mean? Like I usually would play through once and be finished, but this, I was so captivated, and I got like had to soak up every inch of the world that I could while I was playing it, and that was something special. Whereas Odyssey is a great 3D platformer. Maybe there's too many moons. Like they basically, some of them felt cheap because they just kind of sprinkled them everywhere. And I ground pound a little like dimple in the ground and I get a free moon. Whereas the other one requires me to do a whole little platforming gauntlet or something. It felt like maybe they went a bit too far on that. But like the controls, the game, the
I love Mario Odyssey
controller with the throwing the hat. Like how did they not do the hat throwing in a previous game? It just
I know.
It works so well. It feels so natural for Mario, you know? And like they thought of water backpack before throwing hat. Like, I mean,
yeah,
okay.
I feel like I'm dead inside because I haven't played Mario Odyssey, and it's mostly because every time I load up my Switch, I look at the eShop and I'm just like, I'm not paying that much. But
that's what happens, buddy.
It's the Nintendo Evergreen. They're always stupidly expensive compared to the PC space or even the sales you get on
you got to
the
pay
HD
for quality.
That's the quality seal of Nintendo, right? But I succumbed to the hype. Ocarina of Time is in my top 5 games of all time, right? It was
I love Ocarina.
It was a key part of my childhood. You know, it was up there for me. It was like Halo, Ocarina of Time, Perfect Dark. Those were like quintessential.
First God of War for me. The
moments.
First God of War.
But I succumbed to the hype. I bought a Switch. I told my wife, yeah, it's for the kids. It wasn't. It was for me. And I got Breath of the Wild and I played it. And I wanted to love it. I wanted to be like I was 10 again and playing Ocarina of Time. But man, I guess real life and kids and stuff and the weapons kept breaking. And I'm like, that's the stupidest fucking mechanic.
That's the only part I didn't like.
It may well be. If someone could hand me my Switch modded so that the weapons didn't break or that I had the Master Sword, I'd probably plow through quite happily. All right, but I just don't have time anymore to sink 120 hours into that kind of game. And that's equally the same like GTA 5. Man, I bought that twice. I've still not completed it. I'm never gonna. I may as well just give up. It's gonna come out on the Xbox Series X. I'm gonna be like, third time's a charm. Here's another 50 quid, Rockstar. Thanks very much.
Maybe this time.
Maybe this time. I just can't do it. And even when I saw the Cyberpunk stuff that came out this week, I'm like, I love the setting. I love the fact that it's now a shooter, which is at least a genre that I'm moderately comfortable with. But I just know in my heart of hearts, I will run out of steam on it. It's the same with Red Dead 2, which arguably is beautiful but plays like shit.
See, that's the funny thing though for me with Breath of the Wild is like I'm like you in that like I'm with you there where when I see a game like for example my wife's always telling me to play what is it Dragon Age Inquisition or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Dragon Age Inquisition. She wants me to play that. Like she made me play The Witcher 3 a while ago, and honestly I'm glad she did because it is actually a really good game in a lot of ways. But it's not really my type of game. I don't usually play those because when you tell me that a game is going to take hundreds of hours to complete, I'm just like, no, thank you. I'll spend 15, 20 hours, plowing through a Mario game and have a great time and then move on. Like I'm not a huge fan of the fact that games are getting to the point where they're 100-hour experiences and stuff. But with Breath of the Wild, I think that's why I mentioned it over Mario in this context because I didn't notice the time passing by when I played it. I just got immersed in the world. It was really pretty, and I just wanted to ride around on a horse, and I wanted to adventure. There wasn't this like ham-fisted story dragging me along, forcing me through. It was just, I see something up there, I'm going to climb that piece of crap, And then I somehow made it over there and climbed it. I was on top, and I'm like, what now? And then I just glide down somewhere else that looks interesting. And it gave this really interesting like freedom of exploration while also being this Zelda adventure game that felt familiar but like a breath of fresh air. I think that's what I really appreciated about it, because like I don't invest that much time into playing a game ever at all, really. I think most recently it's been Breath of the Wild and probably now Animal Crossing. But Animal Crossing, it's like these bite-sized sessions over a long period of time.
It's almost more, from what I'm hearing about Animal Crossing, it's almost more like checking your social media accounts. You log in for a bit, check what's going on, and then jump back out.
Toxic, you know, like
I'd rather. No one's telling you to kill yourself, or
well, they can if you tell them to tell you that. But like like all of the animals in my island are saying like, you know, like Spanish curse words and stuff, because my wife is from South America, and she like just like you could tell them what's a little catchphrase or something, and then I'll be playing the game and I'll be like, what did you just say?
Nintendo, they won't be happy with you putting swear words in their family-friendly products. I don't know. I think
funny you say that though. I'm the same with Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. I think Breath of the Wild I put in about 100 hours or so, and Mario Odyssey another 60 or 70. But then I went and collected all 999 moons though, like because you can beat that game a lot quicker. You don't have to collect all 1,000 moons. You can collect a hell of a lot less. And my 4-year-old's been playing it, and he is obsessed with it. And I'm actually shocked at how good he is at Odyssey. Like, he's got the whole hat mechanic down pat. He knows to throw it out, jump on it, jump forward, throw it again, jump on it again. Like, he full-on knows how to navigate that game. I mean, I love them both, but that's why I asked. Because to me, Mario Odyssey is almost a perfect video game. It's
Mario
almost
Odyssey,
perfect.
like, I think I got like 800 moons or something, and I think at the point where most of them were coming from like the sort of achievements in Peach's Castle, that's where it started to go like, okay, this is pretty grindy, and is it really worth it at this point to keep going? But like, honestly, I just enjoyed playing through it immensely because it feels so good to play, and
amazing.
Like you don't always find games that have such a really great, responsive, fluid character controller that it's just fun to run around a sandbox area and do cool moves and stuff. You know, like for example, that's something even in development of games where that multiple people have mentioned. You know, where like you're just open a level you're working on, and you're just running around and messing with the character controller. Like I'm running around as Ori, and I'm slashing with the sword and jumping around and bashing off things and whatever. But with no real rhyme or reason, no level that I'm actually playing through that's telling me to do this exact series of inputs. But then I realize like 20 minutes have gone by, and I've just been, you know, noodling around in some random test space because the controller is just so fluid and fun and feels good to play. I think that's the sign that you've already got something really special. And with Mario Odyssey, it's exactly that, where you can toss me in any spot. There's not really much to do, and I'm going to have a good time just throwing my hat around and trying to bounce off it and do crazy kick flips and whatever. You know,
my son just keeps repeating the same levels. Like he's just replaying them and getting moons he's already got just to collect more money so he can buy new outfits. Like he just keeps replaying it. He doesn't stop. It's unreal.
Nintendo, really man, they're in a league of their own in terms of how games feel. I think.
My thing with Breath of the Wild is that the world is beautifully constructed and everything's well put together, and nothing in that game, at least world building wise, isn't there that doesn't make sense. It kind of all just flows really nicely into each other. I hate the minutia of it. I hate the combat is inconsistent. I hate that the shrines are like they don't scale with the player at all. Which I think is like the dumbest thing coming from, like, I'm a fan of the old Zelda games. Like I'm like 24. I'm pretty young, but I grew up on stuff like Twilight Princess, on stuff like Skyward Sword, you know. And those are very structured, very linear, very go from here to here, do the dungeon, finish that, go from that dungeon to this dungeon, yada, yada, yada. But there is a path and a progression to that I think Breath of the Wild misses.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in its shrines, because there's so much you could do with the complexity of the shrines, especially once you get all the abilities of the tablet unlocked, that you just won't experience because Nintendo didn't design the shrines in a way where you're getting a near linear progression of them to build that difficulty up. You're always getting a dedicated shrine at a dedicated spot, and they can't guarantee when you're gonna find that shrine.
Yeah,
they can't build around that.
I totally agree with you in that regard. Like, there's something magical about. I mean, this is why Nintendo is so well known for like their design philosophy in their games, right? Because Mario levels are the blueprint for how to design a level, where you introduce a mechanic, you tease it, you force the player to use it, you escalate on it, you challenge them, and whatever. And it's like this perfect encapsulation of, okay, how do you build up difficulty and complexity and ramp things up over a game. And Zelda was always good for that, because you're constantly getting, it's similar to Metroidvania. You're getting an ability in a dungeon that unlocks new paths, and as a designer, you can only go here if you've gone there, which means that now we know that you have this, and we can give you the difficulty that's appropriate and stuff. And in Breath of the Wild, it's admittedly really crappy to an extent that you get all of your special abilities on the plateau, like all of your magnesis and stasis and whatever, because they have to give that to you before you get sent out into the open world, where you could literally stumble upon the hardest shrine in the game, where you need all of these abilities, and you don't want to just enter a shrine and be like, sorry, you don't have what it takes to do this yet, come back later, when it's like, but this is just one shrine in a giant world, like, how am I going to remember to come back to this? You only have 5 markers you can place. But so it's like, it's admittedly weird that it's like if you entered a Zelda game and they said, here's a hook shot, here's your bow and arrow, here's your slingshot, and here's this whatever, now go have fun. And it's kind of like, that takes away half of the fun of a Zelda game, right? And even the lack of dungeons was disappointing, because the Divine Beasts were really interesting level design wise. It must have been
they basically kind of were the dungeons,
but it's not really a dungeon. Like, it doesn't. And go ahead.
And they all kind of played the same, really. Like, they had their own unique like style, like the ones where you could rotate around and whatever to get to certain spots. That was actually all of them, wasn't it? No,
they all had their own unique gimmick.
Yeah,
like the bird could rotate. The camel could actually spin the entire rooms around.
The elephant, you have to raise you had to raise the trunk, and that was all cool and all. But there's only 4 of them.
Yeah.
And there's this massive world where literally anything could be there, and the shrines felt so disconnected from the rest of it. Like, you go into a shrine and it looks completely different from the rest of the game. Like,
it's almost like a hologram area, like a training mode.
Yeah,
And
they're all the
some
same.
of them were literally just like walk to the other side of the room, and that's it.
Well, but also like, the issue is also they all look the same. So it's just kind of like they never have their real unique identity. It's just, there's the shrines, but it's not like, there was this cool shrine and that cool shrine. They all kind of bleed together a little bit.
Yeah.
But the other weird thing about the game, in a similar vein, is like, for example, I did all the Divine Beasts, and I buffed myself. I got the Master Sword. I did all this stuff, and then I went to fight Ganon, and boom, half of his health is gone because I did the Divine Beasts. And it's kind of like, already I've buffed myself so much that I'm ready for this fight, but because I did all the fun content that the game presented to me before doing the final boss, which feels like the natural way to do it, now the boss gets super nerfed in a way that I wasn't expecting. And in the moment you go, oh, that's cool, my friends are helping me, wow, what a reward for having done all that work. But then when you fight the boss, you're like, wow, that was actually really easy. And then you feel bad that you actually buffed yourself so much, because
there's
people, I wanted a proper fight.
People that advocated, there's people I've watched that advocated to just go for Ganon first. When you are like super gimped, you have absolutely almost 0 chance of winning, and try and eke out a win. Because like, that is way more engaging if all you're there for is the combat and for the experience of trying to fight these bosses, because once you get to the point where you're again and you've beaten everything else, okay, this is the easiest fight in the world now, because you have everything available to you. There's no, it didn't scale with where you ended up.
But if you think about it, that's kind of exactly what the game is from the start, where it's like, this is where Ganon is, but you're too weak to do it, so go get strong until you feel confident to fight Ganon. And it makes sense to a degree. It's exactly what you expect, right? Where it's like, I'm weak, I need to do...
the hero's journey.
Exactly. But it is kind of a shame. And I mean, the funny thing is, this is a typical kind of like conversation where a gamer or a player or something would say something like, why didn't Nintendo just put the shrines, like you enter a shrine in the world and it just gives you the first shrine, and they just have an order, and it's like no matter what shrine you enter, it gives you the next one in the series of shrines. And it's like, yes, on paper that sounds like it's a smart solution, But can you imagine how difficult it is to basically be like, oh, there's a shrine over there. Which one is it? Well, I don't know, because it could be any of them. And sometimes it's cool to be able to say, oh, where's that shrine where you have the rolling ball puzzle and it's that, oh, it's hidden under this mountain. But if they're all basically a predetermined series of shrines,
mystery a little bit.
You lose a little bit of that, you know? And so it's really difficult. Like and it's also a bit vague too, you know, that it's just like, wait, so first, or imagine this, right? Because that's a system that's hidden from the player. You wouldn't say straight up, every shrine is going to be the next one that we want to give you. So you play and you say, oh, dude, you got to check out this shrine under the snowy mountain. It was really interesting. And you check it out and you're like, what? It was just fighting a robot. No, when I did that one, I had this whole wind challenge and this and that. And then all of a sudden, discourse is super confusing because nobody can reference anything because they all had a slightly different experience because of the order, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think Nintendo decided what game they wanted to make. They wanted to make a more open experience, sort of to harken back to the old Zeldas. They wanted it to be about the world, like the world is a character and everything else. Like it's the Breath of the Wild, you know.
Yeah.
And they kicked a lot of the basically Zelda tropes out and said we're going to do something totally different. And it's funny because like from a design standpoint and even from a player standpoint, I agree with you completely. Like I missed those elements from Zelda. I loved in Twilight Princess that stupid top that you ride on and see the tracks on the wall and you're like, oh my god, I can ride up those now, and it just feels special. And you don't have that in Breath of the Wild, but Breath of the Wild has these natural enemy encounters where they're sleeping at night and you can sneak up on them, or you can climb their tower when they don't see you and drop an explosive on their head and watch them all scatter, and you can catch things on fire and then ride the gust. And it's like all of these immersive, beautiful, like coherent systems in the world and stuff makes it feel really special as an experience. But then you've got Korok seeds where there's like 1,000 of them and you're like, oh god, not another one. And then it's kind of like, it's clear they had to fill up the world with stuff to do because it was just so big. But something about the journey and the fantasy, like, it really worked for me, even though I agree with all those points completely.
I will say though, knowing Nintendo and how they work, one thing Nintendo have demonstrated a lot over the years is that they're generally really good with learning. So they'll make a game or they'll invent a genre, I guess.
Systems. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what they'll learn what they did wrong, I guess, or what they could improve on, and they'll generally implement that in the next game. So for me, I might be in the minority here, but I preferred Galaxy 2 to the first one. And part of the issue I had with the first Galaxy, I felt they fixed in Galaxy 2. Like, I liked how Galaxy 2 had that more structured, here's the level, here's the level, here's the level. You know that map that it has where you can just pick which
Up
one
world.
you go to? So for me, I liked that. So to me, it felt like Nintendo almost heard what I didn't like about the first Galaxy and fixed it in the second. So it'd be interesting to see, with Breath of the Wild being the first of that kind of open world game Nintendo was tackling, although I'd argue Mario Odyssey kind of is. It'll be interesting to see how Nintendo implements their learnings from Breath of the Wild into the second game, particularly with the shrines. Like, and I wonder if we'll have weapon degradation again, because God, I hope we don't. But I really hope we don't.
Please, God, no.
It would be a really interesting. It would be really interesting to see if they manage to take the best of both Zeldas, basically, like the old school formula and all the great stuff that came from the new game, and sort of add a bit more linearity. And I think it's possible. It's very possible if you don't go for the same shrine structure again and just focus on other things and have actual proper dungeons and extra secrets in the world. But I think you're right that they tend to sort of sometimes they learn from
most of the time,
things that people didn't appreciate or whatever, and build on top of it to make better games. And and then there are other franchises like Mario Party that just continue to spiral around the bottom of the toilet bowl for some reason. It's hard to understand.
Hold on a second. The new Mario Party on the Switch is not that bad.
I haven't played it yet, but from what I've heard from other people, it sounds like it doesn't have enough maps. And it's
that's pretty true. It does not have enough.
Too simple. But from the mini games, honestly, like, I've never seen a piece of meat in a game that looks as delicious as the one in that Mario Party mini game where you're rolling it around the wok in the oil and stuff. That looks amazing.
I want to eat it.
But I mean, I love Mario Party, but I haven't brought myself to buy the game because, like, I think I did play it actually with some colleagues at one point, and it felt a little bit like a slog and stuff. And it feels like there's so much in Mario Party that worked really well, and you could make like a 4. I played the
4 on the GameCube.
Was that the last one like that felt like a traditional Mario Party before they started jumping in a car together and doing weird stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I bought it on the Wii U because I put the Wii U in my daughter's room, and my son at one point was obsessively watching Mario Party videos on YouTube Kids, and he really, really liked... I mean, he just loves Mario and Luigi anyway. So I went and bought a copy of Mario Party 10, I want to say, on Wii U. It's actually not that bad. It's not too bad.
I don't think Mario Parties in general are ever bad per se.
Oh, no.
But it's just that they've made some questionable design choices. Like, for example, so they put everybody in the same car and they move around the board together rather than letting them choose their own paths like a traditional board or something like that. And it's like, then they kept going down that road, or almost like what they did with Paper Mario, where they took like, here's something that people really appreciate and let's totally change like the
blow it up.
And then just keep going. Like, so you mentioned Nintendo learning from their previous mistakes maybe and making better iterations. Mario Party is like the exact opposite of that, where it's like it started going down a dark path, and it's like, wait, Nintendo, turn around. And they walk further up, like, no, wait, I have a flashlight here, follow me. And no, what are you doing? Where are you going?
But to be fair though, is Mario Party developed internally at Nintendo, or do they usually outsource that one?
I don't know. I think
Smash Brothers. It's internal. I think it's internal.
Because Smash Brothers, for example, was made by Namco, wasn't it?
Collaboration, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Because I know that some of their games are technically made by a third-party studio.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're putting their seal of approval on things.
Yeah, that's
Nintendo
true.
comes with some kind of like
super strict. Yeah. It's interesting though hearing about the differences in terms of how players feel about different mechanics. Like as Cairo and Ed will tell you, I'm a massive fan of Sea of Thieves, which doesn't make any sense when you think about what I've just complained about how it's grindy and I don't have the amount of hours in the day to play it, and yet I've probably spent over 500 more than that over the last 2 years playing that game. But that's because it's driven by friends. But everything in it that happens is emergent. It's about that crazy story that might happen. Whereas, and I think that's just a whole different aspect of design that it must be really hard to kind of counter for. And you could kind of see when Rare launched, they provided this backbone, and then they had to very quickly change their plans from a community perspective. And even now, I think this week, something that a lot of players have been crying out for years is private servers. Because people love the world, but funnily enough, don't like getting ganked by other pirates like me, stealing all of their stuff after they've spent 8 hours grinding for it. And it's like, well, it's a pirate game. Like, that's the point. Like, come on.
Comes with the territory.
And yet these people are like, no, I just want to fight the world, and you leave me alone. And, I get it, but I guess I feel for any game designers that have to try and juggle all of these desires to make a product that's commercially viable, and yet creatively interesting for them. It must be a tough challenge.
I don't envy them. But I mean, that's the interesting thing, because for a game like Ori, we make the game, we release it. It's not a live service. It's not something that we're constantly iterating on and trying to make better. So people can say, "Can you guys change the ending and this and that?" And it's like, no, it's done. It's like a movie. You watch it and it's not going to change the next month or something.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about like design in multiplayer games focusing way too much on. It's kind of hard to explain, but the thing with Sea of Thieves, a lot of people people look at Sea of Thieves and say a beautiful game. They want to play it, right? And like what you said, John, with the whole like people don't want to get griefed even though the game is about pirates, And the thing to juggle about unlimited freedom multiplayer games is that I feel, at least in my opinion, at some point you don't want to become EVE Online.
Yeah.
Which is unlimited freedom to do whatever you want, and then the game basically becomes, it's better just to watch and hear about what happens than to actually play the damn game.
I agree with that.
It's like,
but I think some of those moments though, like we came across a player, we didn't have as many resources as we would have liked, right? There was a little sloop. He was a solo guy on his own. There's 3 of us. If we find a ship like that and we need resources, yeah, you can be damn sure we'll pull up alongside you and take everything from your ship. We don't necessarily will sink you, but we'll leave you completely defenseless. And this guy was like, "Oh, hey guys. Oh, you want all my stuff? Oh." And he kind of he sounded really sad. And we were like, "Get on the ship, mate." And, like that.
You're one of the crew now?
Yeah, and he came with us, and we went and did this massive skelly ship battle. And he brought his ship back, and we brought a storage crate back over to him, and we gave him more stuff, and he came in with us. And he lost his ship halfway through. And instead of... And we said, like, come back with us when you can cash some of this in. He said, "It's been an honour playing with you, gentlemen." And he did the salute emote, and it just logged out. And it was just like... That wouldn't have happened in any other game. No designer designed that quest or path or anything like that. And I think that's one of the things that I really love, is you just never know.
It's something you can't really design. Like,
no.
You can only give the means to do it. And it's got to be really tricky, because it's like you want to make a game where people can have fun playing together, but you can't compel them to do what you want them to do. And God knows players like to do the exact opposite of what they think the game wants them to do, just to push the boundaries and make us pull our hair out.
Yeah,
it's the old lead a horse to water problem.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned. I think you mentioned movies on Netflix a second ago. Cuphead, which was graphically one of the most unique games I think that came out this generation.
Stunning
work from MDHR. They had their trailer for the Cuphead TV show, which they've partnered with on Netflix this week, and I was like, it doesn't look half bad.
They announced that a while back. Yeah,
I probably wasn't paying attention, but it looks really good.
It looks goofy and fun. Honest, like that animation in that game was like, holy crap. When I first saw it, like I'm like, so I actually wanted to be an animator before being a game designer. Like when I was modding, I was animating for Warcraft 3 stuff. And my uncle used to he was like an art director on Beauty and the Beast at Disney and stuff. So when I grew up, I was like, I want to be an animator. And in the end, I ended up going a different path. But I still have this kind of like, love of animation, and especially 2D hand-drawn animation. And when I saw a game with that style, I was like, this is amazing. This is the best.
And
and then when you see the like the background, like when they did, I think they did like devlogs or whatever, going through their creative process, and you see them all hand drawing every single animation in the game, like beforehand, before it's even touching a computer. They have animators sit down, buy the books, draw every sheet of the animation, and they post that up, and and just seeing that process was just insane to me.
But hands in the air, how many of you on this podcast thought that looks phenomenal, bought it kicked your ass, and you never finished it? And that is the other thing, right? So as a game designer, you did it, you finished it.
I beat it. Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Mad props. I could not.
I started with a friend. We got halfway through, and then I realized halfway through, this is way harder with a friend. I'm gonna do the rest of it solo. And then I beat it. Yeah, it was super fun. Like that there's like a robot boss at the end that kicked my ass, and I was like, no thanks. But I pushed through, and I'm happy I did. Like, it was a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I found that frustrating, because I loved it, but I was like, I am too old to play this genre. My reflexes are slacking. And
so hard.
I reminded me, there was a really, really like meme-worthy games reviewer journalist that was trying to do, or was doing some gameplay. I think it might have been for IGN or Polygon, and they were playing just the tutorial, where it's on the white background and press A to jump.
And he couldn't figure it out.
And it's 20 minutes of him just failing to jump or failing to dodge, and it's like,
what's funny is that video wasn't that video wasn't from a review. That video was from a preview of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had written an article about, and he still said, I love like everything, because he couldn't get past that part. But he said, I love everything about this. And people took that on Twitter afterwards, claiming it was a review, and that all reviewers are garbage because they can't even figure out how to jump over this. And it's like,
it was
wow,
painful to watch.
Thanks for missing the point.
It reminded me of me trying to play some of the later levels. I was just like, and then I watched someone do a Games Done Quick, or I think IGN do a series where they get speedruns, and the developer commentates on them, and this guy did Cuphead in something insane like 6.5 minutes, the whole game, every boss, just glitching them and doing all sorts of fancy tricks, and like it was phenomenal. And even me, as a complete novice at that particular genre, I was just like, how are you doing this? It's mad. But that's gamers trying to break the rule set, I guess, and work their way through it. Another interesting thing. Go on.
Actually, that brings up an interesting question. I don't know about this ever happening, but were there ever speed runs of Ori 2 that you guys saw at Moon Studios? You were like, wow, what the hell? How the hell did they do that?
Oh, yeah, like a day after we launched.
Oh, wow.
Oh, like people discovered this weird technique that we had no idea about, where you there's like an ability called Spirit Sentry, where you drop this little glowing ball of light that shoots for you. But apparently, if you do an uppercut with the sword, the same moment that you spawn a sentry, like if you press the 2 buttons at the same time, you get this super vertical jump. And with that, you can basically, it's like a rocket jump. You could just bypass so many early game gates. There's like this first boss that's like this big horn bug beetle kind of thing. That it's like a really straightforward boss early game. With that rocket jump, you can jump over the trigger and completely skip the boss. Because actually, and this is funny because I worked on this part. The achievement. So funny. I say funny with a tear running down my cheek, but it's funny because like there's a door, there's a blockage on the right side of the screen of the room that the big beetle crush just like comes ramming through, right? And that's meant to be like, oh, cool. It's like we contextually broke open the way that you go after you fight the boss and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't think it was possible to get far enough into the scene to see that actual blockage, because every time we stress tested it, it wasn't possible. So the way that it was built and set up, there is no blockage there until the cutscene starts, and then it gets activated so he can run through it, you know? But then that means that the speedrunner, if he jumps over the trigger, there is nothing blocking him and forcing him to fight the boss, so he just goes straight through into the next room and doesn't even have to fight the boss. So part of me is like, why didn't I just put the damn wall there properly, you know? But I thought I was cutting a corner that was like, oh, it's fine. Like this is fine. It's cheap and easier to do this way, whatever. But other part of me is like, secret genius, because now there's a speedrun strategy that the people can skip the boss. And honestly, these guys, they love being able to skip things like this, not because they hate the boss, but because they get their kicks from these little tricks and techniques and things. So honestly, people have been doing crazy stuff like days in, and it's insane. You know, we're working on the game for 4 years and they just break it like that.
Have you guys had to go back? Have you guys had to go back and like patch some of that speedrun technique out just to, you know, because that wasn't really the intended way to play the game, and you know, for some reason or another, decided, hey, I don't want to put a stop to that.
We try not to be honest, because we like to enable the speedrun community. There are a couple things here and there where we noticed that certain sequence breaks, which I don't know if the terminology is familiar, but like it's that you do something out of order, like you're not supposed to, right? Yeah. It'd be like you skip a temple in Zelda and you don't have the hook shot, and then in the next dungeon you need the hook shot, and it's like, well, oops, you know. And we didn't. Maybe we noticed a couple things here and there. Basically, if you really have to work hard to sequence break, and you can find ways around the stuff that's broken because you broke the sequence and you still finish the game, we don't really care. But if normal average players unintentionally sequence break because they don't realize that you're not supposed to go here, and they somehow like jump through spikes like 15,000 times with a special like shard that gives them extra armor, and they somehow get past a thing and they miss an ability, like that kind of stuff we tried to fix a little bit. Not necessarily by blocking the strategy, but mostly by discouraging average players from doing it, because clearly we don't want you to sequence break because you think it's the right thing to do. We want you to, like, if you know you're breaking the rules and you're skilled enough to pull it off, good for
nuts,
you. You know what I mean? Go nuts, have fun. Like, we know that people enjoy it, because we knew that Blind Forest had a really big speedrun community, so we knew from the get-go that we were going to have hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, something similar for the second game. So that kind of stuff comes with the territory. It's just really ridiculous, like, because those kinds of breakage, sequence breaks or whatever, if we find them, they would get logged in as a bug, and one of our level designers go and fix it, you know? And we're constantly doing that, like, year after year as we're building this game, fixing bugs as we go and everything. And then just the thought that in the day after we release, people find these crazy exploits, you know? They, like, fingers crossed, not game breakers necessarily, but exploits that we didn't even know about. It's insane. but that's just like the volume of people playing the game. You know, when
Yeah.
like 200,000, 500,000 people get their hands on your game in the first couple of days, it's a numbers game, really.
Yeah,
it's going to be found by some.
That's the real QA test right there, is on release day, right? So there's only so much testing any development team can do, so I don't think anyone can be blamed for it. But I can imagine it must be just like, how?
especially like, what was the fastest speedrun on day one of Ori 2 release date? The fastest speedrun you guys...
I would say probably less than an hour, something like that.
Less than an hour?
Maybe a little over an hour. But now I think they're down to like 20 minutes, or maybe much less. I don't remember. It's crazy, you know? And it's funny because they find ways to skip like 50, 80% of the game. And it's like, man, we worked years on this content. You don't even want to see it. Like, you see the starting area, you see the final boss area, and you complete the game. Like, what the hell? But again, they love it.
I've got a bit of a talent for breaking stuff. I was in a DM with Thomas while I was playing it just before release, and he was telling me, he's like, let me know if you find any issues, because we've found a few of these things and the build that you've got isn't the final one, and blah, 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 blah. And so I was taking screenshots and I was showing him videos of all of stuff that I had go wrong. And Thomas is like, man, I'm talking to my engineers and you're giving us stuff that no one's ever shown us before. He's like, what are you doing to the game? I'm like, I don't know, man.
The gremlin.
I know how to break
finder.
stuff. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, it's funny because as well, like QA people and designers, like, we're trying to break the game in ways that we feel like make sense to break it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't always think outside the box. Like, we try screwing with things, and especially when it's not my level, I'm super happy to try to break another designer's level. Go like, haha, you missed this, kind of thing. But like, I think players sometimes don't understand the systems as well as we do, so they don't think, oh, it wouldn't be possible for me to do this, right? And so they try, and then in trying, they discover some weird technique or weird glitch that we never considered trying because it shouldn't happen, obviously. And then it's like, crap, But again, if the players have fun, like, if that community, and honestly, I think having a big speedrunning community like Ori seems to have is a really valuable thing for us, because it means that every time there's a GDQ event, like, the name is brought up again, and people are playing and discussing, and they're still active, and it's not just, oh, we play the game once and we're done with it. And actually, I mean, part of why we added these sort of spear trials in the game, like the speedrun, the racing mini game kind of thing that's in there.
Yep.
That, I mean, it's partially because we knew that we had a speedrunning community to begin with, so we knew there would be people that would enjoy these challenges. And then it just turned, we were like, hey, let's just try to build something into the game and that everybody can enjoy, But we knew that, like, the people at the top of the leaderboards were going to be the crazy guys, that out thing.
Thomas actually mentioned that he got some speedrunners in from the start for Ori 2 because they knew.
Actually, one of our engineers was a speedrunner. One of our engineers that we hired, and one of our QA guys, or a couple of our QA guys, are big in the speedrunning community. And so definitely, like, we had people. But again, when you're working on it,
it's different.
you don't have the fresh perspective of somebody who doesn't know the game in and out, and how things used to be broken and how they're fixed now and stuff. So.
Oh, I know.
I mean, maybe the way to do it is to basically bring in a crack team of speedrun people, like, for the last month of production or something, and then say, here, you have 4 days, break the game, and then we have like half a month to fix all this stuff.
I don't know how many of them would want to do that, because they'd be like, no, I'm going to keep this. You'd get some QA test to spot a really cool trick and be like, nope, nothing to see here, wait until release.
I guarantee you that some tester probably was like, well, I mean, this is a really cool technique. It's not really a bug, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. I bet there's a couple that's got snuck in there because it's like the speedrunners are going to love this kind of stuff. And there were a few times that our testers were like, this exploit is there if you do this or that. But for speedrunners, it's great because it means you can shave off an hour of playtime and skip ahead to this thing. And we were like, cool, yeah, we'll leave it in.
Wow.
Like we would consciously allow those things because we know that those people appreciate it, as long as our, like, an average play tester, like an external person coming in to try the game, wouldn't accidentally discover this thing and screw up their experience. That's when it becomes really a bug.
Definitely.
So,
So there were a couple of other news items that landed this week. Three big ones that I think it would be remiss of us not to mention. The first of those being that Microsoft, being at the end of their financial year, closed some stuff down. The first thing they closed down, was Mixer. So Mixer is gone. Or it's gone as of July 22nd, which is a shame. My heart kind of goes out to the people that have built a platform for themselves there, because it's never nice to have that rug pulled out from under you. But yeah, the other thing that they shut down was all of their retail stores. So
it actually made it worse.
Sorry about that.
For those that are listening to the audio version, some amusing lighting going on for Chris right now.
We don't do video at Moon. We only do audio. I'm not used to the webcam shenanigans. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Don't worry.
No, I appreciate the thought.
So Microsoft were in a shutting down stuff mood, but they cheered everyone up at the end of it with a finally for all of the Halo fans, including myself, that have been waiting for sort of 5 years or longer for the next Halo, by dropping a little 1 minute teaser trailer with some audio from a brute of some description, signaling the return of the Banished from Halo Wars 2. Super cool. Definitely got a lot of people talking. It kind of exploded all over Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. And it kind of makes me think that maybe we're going to hear about that July show a little sooner than previously thought. You know, a lot of people have been speculating, is it first week of July? Is it the end of July? Don't think it's going to be next week.
When I said July 6, I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I would love it as long as it's before the 10th, because I'm moving house on the 10th and I've got no internet, so there'll be no live stream from me, with you guys for the show, which would suck. So, Microsoft, anytime before the 10th, it's cool. Afterwards, I've got to build a kitchen, so if you want to delay it till August, also fine. So it's been an interesting week for news, some good, some bad. But as always with the podcast, we have our usual shout out to the community that watch. And knowing that Chris was joining us today, we've got some questions. I feel like because of the discussion about level design and everything, we might have answered a lot of these. Covered. And we do know that some of you have asked questions about Moon Studios' new game, the ARPG. There's nothing to talk about today. We can't pester Chris on it. All right, it's been shut down, so you're just gonna have to wait and see. All right.
Thomas already told us that they're doing an action RPG thing, and that's as far as it went. We couldn't get it out of Thomas either.
So I guess Nick, do you want to read through, see what the Twitterverse is asking today for community questions?
Okay. Yep. I will, because I'm just trying to go through the ones that Chris can potentially actually answer.
Like 8 questions. Like, what are you working on next?
Yeah. So. Okay, this one I can ask. So Hypernova474 asks, for Chris, where did the spirits, I assume he's meant to say spirits of Naru played with, come from? Yeah, where did the spirits Naru played with come from? The spirit tree was a sapling and couldn't have spawned it yet.
I guess they're referring to Blind Forest when Naru was playing with spirits as a child.
I think so. Was it Blind Forest? Yeah.
I would
assume.
assume
in Blind Forest?
I think so.
In Blind Forest, that's where they showed the backstory of Naru playing with, like a young Naru playing with young spirits. They're playing with some ball or whatever. In that case, if they're referring to that, then honestly, I don't necessarily know because I didn't work on the game. But my guess would be that, I mean, if there's spirits and the spirit tree is a sapling, then there's spirits from the previous spirit tree that were already born when the new one sprouted. And if they're talking about the new game, I mean, I don't know if there's spoilers or something, but I guess I'll say spoiler warning at this point.
It's been long enough.
Right. You've been warned, but in any case, if they're talking about this game, there is Naru is not playing with spirits at the end. I think there's like Moki little guys around, but it's not spirits. So I'm not sure. But basically, spirits are born from leaves from spirit trees. So if there were spirits, they either came from the current tree or the tree prior. I don't exactly know how long spirits live, so they could be pretty old, but they look like children. Yeah, I'm rusty on my Ori lore, you know?
I've got to give you kudos. That was a very patient answer. I would have been like, it's a game with magic trees and spirits in. Go figure. Very patient answer. I have to admit.
People really care about this stuff.
Do.
I mean, if anything, after releasing this game, for better or for worse, you can really see how passionate people are about the universe that was created in these two games, and some of them put a lot of thought into a lot of aspects of the lore and the universe and stuff that we didn't necessarily always have the luxury of being able to put that much like detail into, simply because we're crafting the game and we're looking at certain things from a certain level of detail that is necessary for the story that we're telling, you know. And it's normal to have questions. Like every game has sort of lore, and you're like, but what about this and what happened before this and that? And it's like, I mean, sometimes things are open for interpretation, or like
That's
how you appreciate it and stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's like your imagination, let it run wild.
While we said spoiler alert, can I just say that I was like, oh no, when it was revealed whose voice had been narrating this the entire time. I was like,
I know.
The feels. As a minor spoiler alert, because I didn't actually say.
You know what the funny thing was? I must have really bad ears, because when the big giant toad first came along,
very similar.
Yeah, and I'm with Thomas. I'm like, hey, the toad's the narrator, and Thomas didn't say anything. Like he didn't debunk that. I'm like, how cool is that? He's like, yeah, just keep playing. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean. Yeah, that was a really important moment, and we had a lot of back and forth in the story discussion about when we should throw that line in. You know, the ending, like really the beats in the end, to make something that emotional and also, you know, pay enough respect to the characters that we've built over the course of the two games, and all the farewells that we're saying and things like that. Like, it's a really sensitive thing, and we really had to pay attention to how we're presenting that and throwing that line in there. We knew it was important, and it was going to be a shock to people, but honestly, I think it had a bigger impact on many players than I expected to. Like, watching streams, people are watching, tears in their eyes, they see that and they're like, what? Oh my god, what? Huh?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, some
really
people...
It got me.
Well, funny thing is, some people even say, oh my god, Ori was the narrator from both games. And it's like, no, it's very clear in the first game that it's the spirit tree of Nivelle that's the narrator of that game. And we were just trying to say that he was the narrator of this game. But if it blew people's minds a little bit more to think that he was the narrator the whole time, you know, go open to interpretation, right?
Yeah.
But just to clarify, like, it was just from the first game. But I'm happy that moment really landed.
Yeah, it was awesome. I loved that bit. Totally blew me away. What else we got?
Well, I mean, there's a second part to that question, believe it or not.
Oh.
But not related to Ori.
Okay.
He says, also, how far out do you think Xbox will announce games at the July event? As in, like, games that are from 2022, 2023, how far out? Now, we said on this podcast a while back that we had been told that they were going to kind of break their rule and tease or announce games that are quite far out. So for the time being, we'll stick to that. Like, if they show Fable ain't coming out next year.
No.
If they announce Perfect Dark ain't coming out next year.
Well,
So odds are.
I don't know. I Playground Games.
If they announce Banjo Threeie, better come out tomorrow. I really want it.
You guys are working on Banjo
Hold on, aren't
3.
you guys making Banjo 3?
Yeah, what's going on? Thomas said you guys were
We
doing
said
it.
we couldn't talk about future projects, guys.
Hold on.
That
Thomas
was the one.
said-
Cut the
Thomas
podcast.
said on our podcast.
Sorry, I gotta go. You just lost me my job. Come on, guy.
God.
He was in the Skype chat saying you can talk about our Banjo game. Come on.
Don't worry.
Honestly, look.
I'll edit it out.
Honestly, as a developer, as a lover of Banjo, honestly, it would be a dream to work on a game like work on Banjo 3, like a proper Banjo third outing or something. So hey, I mean, Phil, hit me up if you need someone. Like, I know a guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, we had a similar conversation with Thomas, and he's like, yeah, we could do it. Yeah. But
yeah, he said the same thing. He said they'd love to work on a Banjo.
Yeah, it's so true. But yeah, I think in answer to Hypernova's question, I would say that Playground Games are a super efficient team. Now that remains to be seen on their RPG team, but I think that they're a very well led studio, and we've seen open world Forza Horizon games, admittedly with some assistance from Turn 10, come out extreme polish, really great looking games with lots of content and depth and expansion packs and everything else on a 2-year cadence. Now, we're not going to get Horizon 5 this year. I think you're more likely to see Forza Motorsport 8 or whatever, but I wouldn't count Fable as no way next year. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll see what happens. But
later.
When they show games, it's difficult to say, do we think we'll see them further out? I think you'll see them announce games without a date attached, but whether they're 2022, 2023, don't know. But you'll know what they're working on, I think.
As long as we're getting them.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Now I'm trying to think. I'm reading this question, Chris, and I don't think it encroaches on anything you can't mention. It's from a gentleman named Magic Casts, who's actually works at Ubisoft, I believe, Ubisoft Australia. He's saying, if you can't, just say you can't. Sure. Within the ARPG genre, are there any design tropes you believe don't have a place in modern game design anymore? Also, any mechanics ideas from other genres you think could migrate well to ARPG? Is that broad enough?
It is, I guess. But
and he also said thanks so much to you and the rest of Moon for both Ori games.
Okay, that I can answer. You're welcome. Thank you. I think I might actually pass on this one only because my mind is going to go to stuff that I probably shouldn't be. Like, even if I start talking about it in the sense of, like, games I've played and stuff I appreciate, I don't want it to go in places where it shouldn't right now, so I'm just going to hold off on the RPG talk right now.
No, that's why I was reading it, and I'm like, is that one okay, or might it lead to something? Okay.
Yeah, I don't trust myself to focus away from stuff I shouldn't be really thinking about. So
believe me, we know Thomas doesn't even think about that. He just says it. he didn't care. The next one I know you won't be able to. So Philippus 8D, sorry, we probably can't ask your question because it's definitely going to encroach on what they're doing at the moment. The next one we kind of know the answer to. Chinchi. And with the success of Ori, any plans for a new IP, and will you guys show up at the July event? Well, we know they're working. I mean, Thomas already said
there's a new IP, but it's not coming out anytime soon.
And I don't believe they're going to be at the July event. I can tell you that much.
They'll be there to announce Banjo 3. We've already cleared that.
That's right. Yeah. Aside from Banjo 3,
you got to stop talking about.
I'm so sorry.
Ruining the surprise.
Chinchi asks, will Moon Studios continue working closely with Xbox? Your games were one of the few greats for Xbox One.
I can't really. I mean, for the first two with and stuff, I can't really say anything.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I can just say, consoles are great. Like, if you can be on more consoles, why not, right?
But that's right.
More already we're on games. Absolutely.
And the next question, we definitely know we ain't going to be answering, and it's by Malik talking about being acquired by Microsoft.
Yeah, Thomas has ranted about this already. We've covered that. All right, clear that one off. Yeah. I did see a new one that got added, and I'm not sure if you've refreshed, but Holofied.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, no.
He's asked, with Microsoft closing retail stores along with Mixer, does this raise their chances that they would be willing to intake all of the Warner Brothers game studios along with their employees?
We talked a little bit about it last episode.
And we said that it's probably too much staff. It's probably too many staff for Microsoft to take on.
Yep.
Like, the studios are great. Don't get me wrong. They're really, really good studios. But I just don't see Microsoft taking on that many staff.
Microsoft would have to, like, Satya Nadella would probably have to lose his marbles one day and just say, you know what? Screw it. Let's just do it and get it done.
I would say
that's not going to happen.
You've seen
the investors would scream.
Yeah, you've seen the new Microsoft now, right? So if it doesn't make money, They just kill it. You know, they're getting Google-esque in their mindset now. There is no, let's just keep pumping cash into it. You know, if it's failing, kill it. You know,
no, they wouldn't have to do that if they had the right idea in the first place. But
that's a different debate. How about
that's
the
it for Twitter questions. The Discord, the Discord is a little bit less, so that's fine. And this is a pretty good question too. Ashen says, do you think 2D games can take back the customer mindshare from 3D games eventually? Or 2D games are in need of an innovation in gameplay or in terms of immersion that can do that? Like, for example, making a hybrid 2D and 3D game can kind of seamlessly go back and forth from 2D to 3D.
That was
that was super Paper Mario, anyone?
Yeah.
2D, 3D?
Yeah.
No. But look, I personally, I think that 2D games have they've already had like sort of a renaissance, or at least they've managed to stay in the gamer consciousness for years.
Yes.
But they're like with the renaissance back with Meat Boy and Limbo and stuff, like the stuff that actually made Thomas want to make Moon and make a 2D platformer. I think he said that on your podcast before.
Yes.
Like that it's come back with a vengeance, and there are studios like MDHR with like Cuphead that are pushing the boundaries of visuals. Like you couldn't do that with a 3D game; it wouldn't look the same. It's incompatible, right? And if you look at what we're doing with Ori, you know, like it's a 2D game, but the production values and the art and the style and everything else, it's just otherworldly compared to what you would imagine you normally think of a typical 2D platforming game. I think, from my experience, like on the internet, I think there's a large group of consumers that think little of 2D games. Just inherently, they think 2D game, not for
kids
me,
game,
right?
Exactly. Like that,
and it's a shame, but it's a reality, you know. And I'm that way with sports games. I'm like, sport game, not for me.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know that it takes a lot to make those games, and the simulation that they do, like the sweat and all the stuff that they do to make those games feel as realistic as possible and fun for the people that like them. Like mad respect, of course, but it's not my thing. So I can't fault people for thinking the same about 2D. But yeah, I just, it's never gonna like take over and be like, oh, it's the biggest thing now. I think that's not what the average consumer seems to want anymore. They want bigger, more realistic, more bombastic, cinematic, online, you know, massive multiplayer battle royale, whatever the next big trend is going to be.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, it is. I like.
We've discussed that multiple times.
Yeah,
but it's one thing, like Chris. It's one thing to say it's not for you, and it's another thing to dismiss it entirely. Like it's not for you is fine. Like not everyone's gonna like every type of game, but I've never liked.
Yeah, like
anytime I read it on Rosetta or anytime I saw it on Twitter or whatever, I never liked the complete and utter dismissal of 2D games as if they didn't count.
It's not even just 2D games too. It's also cartoony graphics is childish. You see that a lot in movies too, where there's a not insignificant amount of people that will never, ever pay to watch or even sit down to watch an animated movie. Doesn't matter what it is. They don't like animated. They will only watch live action. And when you ask them about why they won't, it's always the stock answer of like, oh, I just think those are for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's
like, for me then.
I love it. It's like more for me then. You know, it's just.
What I never understood though is that visual style, that animated visual style, ages so much better than anything else. Yeah. You know, I've seen Disney now go on this stupid live action kick remake of all their classic cartoons. When I look at that short they made, Paperman, I don't know if you've ever seen Paperman, that short they did, and that is one of the most stunning things I've ever seen in my life. And I think to myself, instead of remaking Aladdin as a garbage live action movie, why not remake Aladdin in the style of Paperman?
Or
so
why
that
not
half
make a
CG
full Paperman movie and forget remakes altogether?
Yeah, I'd love to see less
well,
remakes.
okay, let's keep it realistic for a second. This is Disney we're talking about.
Something they could actually sell to the shareholders. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't understand why Lion King and Aladdin, if they were so desperate to remake them like Tangled or Frozen in CG, keeping that kind of style. Like,
that's it. I'm having to go on a tangent now. You've done it. You've mentioned Disney movies. I'm sorry, everyone.
It was just heartbreaking to see how terrible those movies were when they could have made them so good.
This is the tangent, right? Has everyone's heard of Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
They made the films. The films, okay, whatever. Right, but the books were pretty beloved. Now there was another series of books that I loved as a kid, and that was
Twilight.
Artemis Fowl.
Oh.
You ever read them?
I've heard of them. Yeah,
I've heard of them. Well, Disney
Shades.
just made a movie of Artemis Fowl. Now, I have been waiting for that film. Effectively, the premise of the books, and if you haven't read them, I would really recommend it because they make an awesome game, they make an awesome film, and you're like, why hasn't someone done that? But it's about a 12-year-old boy genius who's a criminal mastermind, right? And he's Irish, and he's young enough to believe in fairies, but clever enough to exploit them. So he finds out that fairies and the whole world is real. All the myths are true. There's leprechauns and goblins and whatever. He captures one, steals their secret book, and basically holds them hostage for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I realise my pitch might not be selling this, but the whole book is a heist movie about outwitting, this, and what the fairies are is actually just really technologically advanced creatures that live underground and have been outwitting us for centuries. And Leprechaun, for example, is the lower elements police recon unit, right? It's all very, very amusing and tongue-in-cheek. They made the film, and the film literally threw the entire script out the window and was just the worst thing I've seen in cinema in probably the last decade. And I was actually cross. So the minute you started mentioning remakes and terrible Disney movies, I just had to throw that tangent in there. Because, and if anyone else has watched it, drop me a comment and just please let me revel in your fury and rage at how much of a crappy movie it was.
I don't know.
And taking it back to games, just like the whole obsession with realistic graphics and AAA gaming and stuff like that, it's just disappointing. Because
where's the variety?
It honestly, like, the games just start looking the same.
Yeah.
To be honest, and it's just. I don't need to see Sad Dad Game 7, from, I don't know, a different studio that's not Naughty Dog.
Well, especially like the military games.
Especially military simulators,
because they're all trying to look like this Desert Storm, whatever, military, shoot up a bunch of enemies and whatever. Like, honestly, like, being a Nintendo guy and having had the opportunity to work on such colorful, fun games like Ori and Rayman and stuff, I consider myself really lucky that I haven't been dealing with all the sort of drab, realistic, shooter focused stuff. It's just not my thing. Yeah. And I'm glad that I can sort of put my passion into stuff that I really do believe in, like colorful, beautiful, artistically, like games that have an artistic direction to them. That it's not the artistic direction is not here's a photograph, match it as closely as possible. And I think that's something that's really important. And also with our medium, it's like we can do things in our medium that you can't in other mediums because it's interactive. Yeah. And that also means doing crazy stuff. But the more realistic you make something, like, I only played a very little bit of Red Dead 2, and I watched my wife play some of it. But the lengths that they went to make the actions and animations feel so realistic to the point where you have to be bored watching them do the realistic movement. Like, press X to pick up item, just make it pop into my inventory while I'm running without stopping me. But no, I actually have to bend over, ruffle through the guy's jacket every single time to pick up a coin. Like, it's like, really, come on, guys. There's like, realism is not a game, and it might feel really sexy to be like, look how realistic it is when my horse craps or something while I'm riding it or whatever. But at least that doesn't ruin my experience. But like having to bend over or controls being laggy because you have to wait for the character to move and stuff. It's just like it's a detriment to the game that you're making more than actually being something valuable.
Yeah.
And that's my issue with the Rockstar games.
Which is why I'm really glad that the hype around like the new Ratchet and Clank game is like super big too, because what it's doing is something that I think you can't really pull off in a realistic setting. That whole instant warp to different dimensions kind of thing.
Having fun with it.
Yeah, and having fun with it, just going wild, right? And you just don't see it as often as you want it to be around, and it sucks. It really sucks.
The last Ratchet and Clank game, the remake, I think it was, of the first one that I played on PlayStation 4, it looked like a freaking movie.
Yeah.
I loved
it looked
it.
great.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Gameplay wise, it maybe got a bit repetitive and felt a bit shallow sometimes, but considering it was a remake of an older game and stuff, I gave it some slack, But those cutscenes and even the gameplay, the animation, the squash and stretch and everything, it felt like an animated movie, to the point where I felt a bit bad because when I saw the reveal of the new one, I wasn't as blown away when I saw it because it was like it already looked like a movie. It still looks like a movie. You know what I mean? Like I think it's a testament to how well the previous one was done.
Yeah.
Even that the new one, it's like seeing Frozen 2 versus Frozen 1.
Yeah, it's diminishing returns.
They both look nice, but at a certain point, you already nailed the style and the fidelity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm super excited by it either way.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I absolutely love those Ratchet games.
Yeah, it's interesting because Sukia Brood on Reset Era, he asked one of the questions, and we've already answered it. He said, do you think Metroidvanias are hard to market? Do you think the audience for these types of games is big enough? And would the size of a 2D or 3D Metroidvania audience limit your endeavours in that genre? I think we've kind of already covered that. Yeah. The only thing I would ever add to it is, would you guys ever want to make a 3D Ori as a 3D platformer, like a Banjo but with Ori?
Because we'd like you to, and we told Thomas that we'd like you to.
I mean, we're already making 3D Banjo, so do you really need an Ori
true.
as well?
Look, do you realise how difficult it is to edit the leaks about Banjo 3 on here? God, guys. I have to go timestamp it and edit it out.
It is a shame, though. Like, I love what Lizard Cube do. I don't know if you played the Wonder Boy 3 Dragon's Trap remake or Streets of Rage 4. Like, I absolutely love... Yeah, I love Lizard Cube's hand-drawn animation and their art style. Like, being the oldest person here, I remember playing 2D games growing up, 8-bit, 16-bit. I always imagined in my head these games looking like cartoons in the future.
Yeah.
So I was so happy to see that that's exactly where 2D games went. They started to just literally look like hand-drawn cartoons. Like Mark of the Ninja... I've said this before. Mark of the Ninja is literally a game I dreamt about as a kid. Just this amazing stealth ninja shinobi-like game with hand-drawn art and just I loved it. It was absolutely perfect.
Well, I feel like the goal of any like animated game should be to just look at what Dragon's Lair did and make it an actual game instead of just a playable movie.
Totally. Yeah. I would play the hell out of that.
Yeah, that'd be insane, honestly.
Yeah.
Have we got any other questions on the Discord?
On the Discord, we went off on a tangent, didn't we?
We did. It was a good one, though.
We do. We actually do. So, Cartoon Soldier has asked the question. First one, we can't ask Chris.
There's a lot of questions about Banjo 3. I don't know what's going on.
Fuck.
The second one we kind of covered. We actually sort of covered the second question already much, much earlier, which is about his take on next-gen SSDs, teraflops, and Lockhart rumors. We already covered that. We also covered the next part, how he's working on a completely distributed team and time zones and that sort of stuff. Talked about that too.
And I think you guys talked with Thomas in detail about that on the last podcast, so if they're really curious, they can listen into that one for more.
Yeah, there's definitely loads of detail.
Now, this one is more for all of us. Will we see Initiative's game in July, or is it still too far along? I think they might announce it in July.
I think you'll see it.
They'll do a Metroid Prime 3.
Even if it's just a logo, that's
title
fine.
Title card with epic music.
Yeah, maybe.
In development now. No timeline.
Okay, I'm actually glad the next question's going to get asked, but I'm also worried that it's going to set off a real tangent because there was a big debate about this in the Discord. And so I think it leads into the smart delivery stuff. So the next question is Halo Infinite going to have a version built natively for Series X and another one for X1 consoles?
What does natively even mean in that discussion?
Well, this is the thing. I was under the impression that smart delivery means you make one version and then you do a patch for 1X. You do a patch for Series X.
Not necessarily, because to me, it always sounded more like smart delivery was kind of like how earlier this week Apple announced the universal binary crap where you compile once and Xcode makes an x86 version and an ARM version of your app. I always thought smart delivery was going to be like that, where you compile the game once and Microsoft's AI or whatever software they got in place figures out a binary translation between the old system and the new system, and figures out how to work from there.
But it's still building it off the one code base. So there's still
that's what I'm saying. Like you hit compile and Visual Studio Code or whatever IDE you use or however this feature gets played out compiles a version for Xbox One and compiles a version for Series X. And the Microsoft's cloud figures out which console you're downloading it to and downloads that specific version. That's what I always thought.
No, that's right. But I think what Cartoon Soldier is asking is, so the way PlayStation does it with crossplay is there's a dedicated Vita port, there's a dedicated PS3 port, there's a dedicated PS4 port. You buy one and you get all three of them. With this, there isn't going to be dedicated ports. There's not going to be an Xbox One port of Halo Infinite.
That sounds more like cross-buy than...
No. I think there's a difference here. So for the new environment, and let's pretend and assume for a moment Lockhart is a real console that is actually going to be released on day and date with Series X, and let's call it Series S. The game development kit for that...
Series E.
Yeah, whatever. It has two profiles within it. You develop for one, then you change profile, and the game development kit will say, you need to lower blah, blah, blah. Those are your two ones. The smart delivery system says, yep, that profile for that profile that, and that's how it's delivered to those consoles. I think for the one and below family of devices, so the OG Xbox One, the S, and the One X, I think each they have something similar, but they haven't put a branded moniker around it in terms of development. But it's essentially the same thing. They're different profiles, and the system just knows, I'll grab 4K assets or I won't. And I think
that's right.
From a performance perspective, you'll probably, and this is a guess, but I reckon you'll probably see something like 720p 30 on
Xbox One.
OG Xbox One and S. You'll probably see 900p or 1080p 60 on One X, and then you'll see 1080p 120 or something like that. I don't know, but that would be my guess, and I guess we could defer to the game developer in the room if he could shed any light on his thoughts, but it's whether I don't know. In terms of how
if I know.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
I saw I'm not I'm not a technical guy. I'm not a programmer or anything.
Yeah.
And I saw the smart delivery thing with everybody else, and honestly, I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, I think so. It feels to me like a bit of a branding. Effectively, this is Microsoft doing the used game thing from 2013 in saying, if you buy a game, we'll deliver you the best game for whatever device you've got. Right? That's the nutshell. It doesn't really matter about the technicalities about it. What they're effectively saying is, we're not going to make you buy your games twice. That's all the consumer has to worry about.
For the end user, it ultimately doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The discussion was more around the back end, and I was under the impression that it was all ultimately one version of the game being built at its core. So there's one version of Halo Infinite being made. Yeah. That's it. One.
Yeah. I assume that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think it just has different profiles for performance targets across the devices.
That's probably something like that. I did actually ask the question of the last Scape developer on Twitter.
Oh, did you?
And while I didn't fully understand his answer. The answer did seem to indicate that it was ultimately one version he was building of the last Scape, and there was profiles involved, like you mentioned.
Yeah, that smells like how it would work to me. But
yeah,
Cartoon Soldier just keeps on going. Your final predictions for the July event? It seems like there is some confirmation now that Gears Tactics is launching with the Series X for consoles. Same for Flight Simulator. Well, I mean, we knew Tactics was coming to Series X.
I don't know if it'll be launched, but why not?
I don't know if it'll be launched, but it's definitely coming. And Microsoft Flight Simulator, I have no idea what's happening with that and consoles.
I doubt it will be on console this year, just because.
Yeah, same here. I doubt it.
A flight sim is, that's for some seriously hardcore dudes with some seriously hardcore setups. I've got a hot ass. I've got a hands-on throttle and stick. That I'm looking forward to digging out and setting it up and playing on PC. But an Xbox console version will be very arcadey, I think, and very simplified.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to take some time to figure out how it will work. Same with like Age of Empires 4. I would hope that Microsoft just say, sod it. If you want to play this game, plug in a mouse and keyboard.
Mouse and keyboard. Yep.
Yeah, it's an easy way to do it. It's fine. It's like needing a Kinect to play bad Kinect games. It's a thing. I think that's probably it.
But we've been over our July predictions heaps, man.
Yeah,
we've talked about them a lot.
I'll tell you what. We'll answer to that cartoon. There'll be a YouTube video for it where we'll give our final thoughts.
I think Strike First has a question in the Discord.
Yes,
what
does.
would be your favorite idea / IP that Global Publishing should work on?
Well, I know Global Publishing are working on Banjo 3 with Moon Studios, but
yep, they're working on Banjo 3 with Moon.
For the record, we're joking. All right, I'm sorry, Banjo fans.
To my disappointment, really we're joking. For the record, Phil, hit me up. I'd love to make it, but it's unfortunately just a joke.
Thomas said in the Skype chat, he goes, "Send me a link to the show when you're done. I want to watch it, and I'm interested to hear how he reacts to all this Banjo." Global Publishing, I've said this many times. I want Global Publishing to approach Sega and Capcom, and I want Global Publishing to bring back Power Stone, bring back Maximo.
You've got Bleeding Edge.
Bring back Altered Beast, bring back Shinobi, and bring back Golden Axe. They are the 5 I want back.
All right.
I want those 5
back. Sega boy. I would like to see a decently done Ninja Gaiden.
Yes.
And I would also love to see, like something super cool. Like I wish someone had pitched like Freelancer. Did you ever play Freelancer back in the day?
No.
I'd love to. You were like Han Solo, and you were flying around. It was like a space combat mission, but it had third person sort of walking around bits. It was cool. It was really arguably before its time, but it was a unique IP. It was all kind of intergalactic space war. But then I think they've got Halo, so they probably just wouldn't. Killer Instinct 2, as in Killer Instinct sequel to the 2013 one. It's a no-brainer, and I'd be really surprised if they haven't somehow found a studio to do that. And it should have been Iron Galaxy, but
I don't know if Iron Galaxy. We've had them boys there. I'm not sure if Iron Galaxy want to do Killer Instinct.
Shame.
I don't know.
I think mine would probably be. Crap! I had it. Oh yeah. Get to Sega and Atlas and get a Persona collection on Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
Persona 3 portable, full 3D, with both the male and female routes. I would like that, along with Persona 4 Golden, because they already ported Golden to the PC, and it runs phenomenally well, and it has Xbox inputs on screen. So
it's in the works.
Wouldn't be that hard.
They did release a questionnaire, Atlas, saying, would you like to see your games on Xbox this week?
They did. Yeah. So that, I would like to see... I would like to see Global Publishing work with Bethesda on getting a remastered version of Morrowind on the Series X. That would be great, but I don't trust Bethesda to make it right, so I want them to find a different developer to do it. Sorry, Todd Howard. Huh? Sorry, Todd Howard, but after Fallout 4, I just don't trust you.
You've had a falling out with him.
Hey. Don't worry. I think In Exile will tick your Fallout need.
Or Obsidian.
Next. Or Obsidian.
Anyway.
What about you? What about you, Chris? If you could pick any Microsoft...
Aside from Banjo, what else would you like to see come back?
Yeah, like a Microsoft IP or something that they could work with another developer on to kind of bring out of nowhere.
That's really difficult, not having thought about it beforehand. I mean, obviously, like, in all honesty, the first thing that comes to mind would be a Rare revival. Because, I mean, to be fair, the stuff people have said about
Gemini.
The stuff that people have said about Sea of Thieves, like, it's good to hear that people appreciate as much as they did.
Yeah.
Because up until Sea of Thieves, it's really felt like Rare had this kind of identity that I loved their games, as a kid. Like GoldenEye and Banjo and Conquer and this and that, and then all of a sudden it was just like, what is going on? And it makes me like, I don't know. I think they had something special before, and then I don't know what it was that got in the way, or it has been getting in the way. But like, I would truly love to see like a Banjo 3, like a return to form, nuts and bolts, I think I agree with other people's sentiments where it's like it's not necessarily a bad game, but it didn't need to be a Banjo game. It could have been its own thing, and it would have been fine on its own merits as this really unique experience. But by slapping the IP on it when it didn't belong there, in my opinion, it kind of like didn't help anyone necessarily, unfortunately. So I'd really love to see that. I think another like game similar to Conquer, or just like games from them that are so that capture that same spirit that they had back in the day when they were really like just themselves, passionate group of people, and maybe most of them have moved on to Play Logic or other things. But I think from what I saw of Sea of Thieves, it seems like there are still people there like that still have that right attitude that they can do it. But I'd like to see them, and maybe it's because they're so sucked into such a big game like Sea of Thieves. But I'd like to see them like what could they do if they were going to be making some more games closer to like 8-hour, 10-hour adventure game, like a cartoony platformer maybe, or just something creative and unique. Like if I wouldn't have been able to tell them to make the games that they made back in the day, and they made some really great stuff. So I'd let them do what they want to do, but it would be nice to let them express that creative freedom. Without being sort of guided too much. I would say.
It's interesting because there was always been that kind of Microsoft made you do Kinect Sports over and over and made you do such and such, but outside of Grab by the Ghoulies, I thought that, and Perfect Dark Zero it played bad, but outside of that,
Viva Pinata was amazing.
Viva Pinata was like, and it's kind of like we've said this before in this podcast. It was a game at the wrong period of time. If Viva Pinata came out now and was on Switch and on mobile and on like, it would capture a certain amount of imagination. But I as a big Rare fan as a kid, GoldenEye, Conquer, Perfect Dark in particular, like I absolutely loved some of those games. And when I play Sea of Thieves, there is still that hint of Rare magic. Like the minute you put your cat in the cannon and fire your cannon, and it goes, you just know that a Rare developer is there, and it's great. And like when they throw up and stuff when you've drunk too much, there are these little moments of Rare. But I'd love to see them step into something that they're well known for from back in the day. I think that's a really good shout. And we've said this, we wish Microsoft would realise some of the valuable nostalgia they have attached to some of their development houses and let them give fans a little something every now and then, even if it's not commercially viable, AAA blockbuster, big seller. Make something that's just for people that really miss that kind of game. I really would.
Well, and also understand what it was about those games, that it wasn't just the face of the franchise, but there was some sort of magic to the experience, to the kind of gameplay there was, and like for example, Nintendo knows how to evolve some of their IPs and keep bringing them in, modernizing them, whereas it seems like sometimes it's like misguided attempts. And it's just like you find people that understand what was special and how to recapture that magic and bring it into 2020, 2025, whenever stuff like that comes out. But it would be nice to see. I miss that. And they had this fun, like as a kid, I didn't really realize it, but there's this fun British touch to the old Rare games, the voice acting, the writing, the jokes, the humor in the environments and the characters and stuff, and it made it so unique and special for the time compared to other like American or Japanese produced things. And it would be interesting to see more of that as well. Yeah,
seriously, Phil, call this guy and get Banjo Threeie approved.
And it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, and you mentioned liking Rare, and you mentioned the Ratchet and Clank games. Now, tell me what you think of this idea, and you probably won't like it. But I've always thought, bring back Jet Force Gemini as a Ratchet and Clank clone.
I haven't played Jet Force, but I'll take your word that it's going to be a good combo.
Oh, look, Jet Force Gemini, I will admit, if you try and play it now, it doesn't play great. Like a lot of those Nintendo 64, as much as I adore the Nintendo 64, a lot of those games now don't hold up in terms of their gameplay. Part of the reason is the lack of dual analog and whatever it is. But when you see the setting of Jet Force, when you see, it's that third-person platformy shootery thing, Ratchet and Clank already does that and does it brilliantly. Like, I just think, just rip it off. Just bring back Jet Force and just rip off Ratchet and Clank.
Rip off something.
Because Ratchet and Clank is already so good. Like, there's no reason to try and do anything.
Take inspiration.
That's
the word we like to use.
Sorry,
in the industry tip. Take inspiration from.
Inspiration. Sorry. It's just those Ratchet and Clank games are so great, and I think Jet Force Gemini could easily be like a really cool Ratchet and Clank clone. But anyway,
I'm just happy to see more 3D platformers coming out. Like even if like the Sackboy Adventure thing is not really my thing because Little Big Planet wasn't really my jam, and I don't have any kind of love for that specific character or the art style. I'm super happy that it exists because it means that the genre is sort of coming back. And
Astro Bot's Playroom.
That was we're seeing really well, and then obviously Mario Odyssey doing its thing.
You know what it's going to be. It's
Super
gonna be
Lucky's
Voodoo
Tale
Vince
and you
2.
Super Lucky's Tale.
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be Voodoo Vince 2. Phil Spencer's favourite game, Voodoo Vince. That's what it's going to be.
Please.
Anyway.
Nick's hype just deflated into the floor. You see it on his face.
I want to bring back good games.
The soundtrack was good. Have we got any other community questions, or are we? Is that all wrapped up?
Not in the Discord.
Jolly
not
good.
In the Discord.
Well, look, we've smashed the 2.5 hour mark, and I appreciate that. Well, at least for me, it's getting really, really early in the morning, like 3 a.m. early in the morning. So I'm going to take the opportunity to thank Chris for joining us. It has been,
thanks heaps.
A jolly good blast. I think I'll call this episode Nintendo Era.
Yeah.
Do it.
Or Banjo 3 revealed. One of those. Get some
the exclusive Banjo. We got our exclusive. Yes.
And
Banjo, no, just put Banjo 3 reveal with a question mark. Leave some wiggle room.
I will actually probably do that just for laughs. But and I'll put Banjo as the banner on YouTube. That will really get some people going. What? And I'll have to scan. I won't put any timestamps either, so I'll have to really scan through this thing.
That's how we get the clicks. We
put expert level clickbait.
But seriously, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Really, really enjoyed the chit chat. It's great to hear about game design and Ori, and I think I speak for probably everyone in gaming. We're really looking forward to seeing whatever this action RPG might be once Banjo 3 is done and dusted.
Of course,
priorities. Yeah. It's been good. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up. As always, if you like what we do on podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. We're available on SoundCloud and Spotify and whatever other music platform of choice. And we will see you all next time.
I do want to say one last thing. Sorry, I do want to say one last thing. As some of you may remember or know, last week was my birthday. And my wife sneakily went behind my back and sought John out. And he to my surprise, my family played this really nice video of my family and friends and stuff saying memory of Nick or things about Nick or whatever it was. And it's funny, I'm watching this video and then John popped up in it, and I was like, "What?" And that was it was a really nice surprise. It was nice to see John appear in that video, and it's funny. I'm actually wearing one of my 40th birthday presents. So my sister-in-law made this T-shirt, and I don't know if you can read that.
You are special.
But yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. So I thought, so I thought I just wanted to say thanks for that. I thought that was a really nice surprise.
Pleasure. And happy birthday. Apologies that I forgot to actually say that on the
podcast. No. I don't like being reminded of how old I am, so that's fine.
He's 40, folks. Make sure you remind him in all of the YouTube comments. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Good shout. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.
Hey, everybody.
Ciao for now.